Hi, and welcome to the THC Show, episode number 20. I'm your host, Neil Magnuson, and this is a show where we try to educate, stimulate, and motivate by telling the truth about what's not quite right in our world and providing some mechanisms for change, and in doing so, hoping to give some hope to people that it doesn't have to stay the way that it is. Today on the show, we're going to have Jerry Martin for the Martin Medical Moment. Glenn Wells with another surprise guest will be here for the 420 session. And I also have a surprise co-host on the show today, and the guest will be a surprise because that's just the way we're doing it for New Year's. A shout out to Amber McIntyre, who sent me a bag of these amazing THC buttons and a few other really nice things that she sent me there. Thank you so much. She just did that out of the spur of the moment and the goodness of her heart and decided to send these to us. I guess she's a fan of the show, so I'm very happy about that. Today is the last day of 2019 and the last day of the second decade of the third millennium, but we're moving into 2020. And 2020 is a year that I hope we all get to see clearly what's going on here. I think that this is the year that we get clear on the government corruption that is going on in our society here and the value of cannabis. And also the safety of cannabis, because part of this government corruption that I'm referring to is so well exposed by the attempt to prohibit and overregulate and restrict cannabis. Because cannabis is one of the safest compounds found in nature. According to Judge Francis Young in 1987, he declared that cannabis was the safest therapeutically active compound known to man. So here we are in a world where cannabis is now going to be legal because we fought that battle so hard to prove that there was no justification in prohibiting cannabis, and there was a lot of harm being done because of it, because prohibition carries with it a lot of unintended consequences if what you're trying to do is address drug abuse. So we won that battle. We got so-called legalization, and legalization is really just Prohibition 2.0. It's a horrible attempt by the government to wipe out the original industry of cannabis suppliers and growers, and to really put a real blow to the activism that was going on, to divide our community, and to monopolize the sale of cannabis of all things. And in many cases, this is being orchestrated by people that were in charge of prohibition in the past. Former police chiefs and other people are now selling people weed when they were putting people in jail for doing that for most of their careers. And like I say, I think this is the year when things really need to get clear about the corruption in our world here. In Canada, we're supposed to be a free country, a civilized country, a free society of citizens, and yet we are far from that, very, very far from that. And the corruption runs very deep throughout our governments, and the way things are governed here in Canada, it goes right to the top. And, we deserve much better than this. It's time that we really sat down and thought about what we deserve to have as free people in the form of government and public servants, and what their role should be. And their role certainly should not be to restrict and get in the way of commerce and business for the end means of corporate people that want their products and interests protected. And that's the corruption that I'm talking about. That there's a lot of money at stake here. There's a lot of money involved here. And you can see how corrupt our system has become when you look at how they've legalized cannabis. Because cannabis is just a plant like every other plant. It should never have been prohibited in the first place. It's a vegetable that you would grow in your garden like any other. It's a medicinal herb that you would grow in your garden like any other. The only difference would be, I think, that it's better than most of the other things that you can grow in your garden because it has so many more uses, and it's so much safer. Because although most people don't die of overdoses of blueberries and strawberries and potatoes and things, they can. And that's not really a problem in our society, so we shouldn't have to worry about that too much. But you can't overdose on cannabis at all like you can on those other things. And in fact, cannabis is so much of value to people for medical purposes, for industrial purposes. Many of the other things are valuable for medical purposes and industrial purposes as well. they're all just plants. They're plants that we use. This one in particular, for thousands of years, has been embraced by hundreds of cultures around the world for its medicinal value and its industrial value and in the fibers that you can get from it and the other things that you can get from cannabis plant is just amazing. So because of its value, it became something to be afraid of if you had a competing product. If you wanted to grow cotton, for example, or if you wanted to have, other products that cannabis is good for, like fossil fuels and things like that, well, cannabis became a problem because it's harder to patent, it's harder to control. And so there was a war that was launched against this extremely valuable plant. And as we've talked about on previous shows, the first casualty of war is the truth. And the truth that they were lying about is the value of cannabis and the safety of cannabis. And they lied about it by saying that it was horribly dangerous, that it caused reefer madness and people would go insane and become violent and you'd be horribly addicted to it and die a terrible death because of that addiction. And that's what the world was talking about in North America here in the early part of the 1900s with articles that were written in William Randolph Hearst's newspapers as he was on a vendetta against cannabis for his own personal reasons. And other people that conspired as well to try to keep cannabis down and to try to promote these other products and things. And the result was that they've used the criminal law to try to prohibit people from growing and selling and even possessing this amazing plant that is simply of not any danger to anybody except the bottom line profits of these corporations. So now we've had prohibition for 100 plus years in North America here, and cannabis still being a very, very valuable and desired commodity. And prohibition actually increases the desire for things, but cannabis all by itself really does help people in so many profound ways. It's a spiritual tool and a conduit. It's a medical tool for so many different things. A recreational tool, which is a subset of medicine, and don't let them tell you any different. Recreation is preventative medicine. It's recreation. It's all medicine. It's an amazing herb when consumed that way, and it's amazing in the way that it helps us, the strongest fibers, the most absorbent fibers, and all of those types of things. So this is just a plant with more value than most of the other plants as far as how it can be used and how much people like it. But it doesn't cost any more to produce. It doesn't cost any more to produce than heirloom potatoes and getting them to market and most of the other things that you find in your grocery store. So the fact that cannabis is being sold by the gram instead of by the pound like everything else is one indicator of how corrupt it is. And the fact that it's $10, $12, $14, $15, $30, $40 a gram, depending on where you are in the world, well, there you go, because there's no more cost in production than just about any other thing that you find in the grocery store. None of that's over $10 a pound. So it's just a symbol. We're not going to get down to $10 a pound for cannabis, I'm sure, because of the history of it and how much people like it. But really, you should be able to walk into a grocery store and right alongside of the carrots and potatoes and celery, there should be a bin of fresh cannabis there that you could take home and do whatever you want with. Use it for cooking, cure it, smoke it, vape it, whatever you want. That's how things would be if they were reasonable. And this is why it's good that we have what's going on now, because it exposes how unreasonable things are. We really, like I say, need to reset our democracy. We need to think about what it is that we want public servants for, because they've really outgrown their original cause and been corrupted and co-opted by these corporate forces that lobby them successfully behind closed doors, where our interests aren't being protected, but the interests of corporations are. And so we've got a world where we're afraid of our governments, we're afraid of the police, we're all unhappy about the level of taxation, we're all unhappy about the different fees and fines for many of the things, not for all of the things, because some things deserve punishment and some things deserve to have fees collected, and taxes are very valuable, and we need some taxation because some things cost us money. And if we're going to have public servants, they need to be paid because they're not really servants. We don't make slaves out of people anymore, hopefully. These public servants of ours get paid a good living for doing what they're doing, and we need to be able to pay them to do that. And we need to be able to pay for the infrastructure that they help provide for us, and for the education that they help provide for us. And all of these things cost money. But the punishment that we give out to people is also costing us a lot of money, and it's barbaric. It's another part of our democracy that we need to reset about why we punish people and how much we punish them and in the ways that we punish them. Putting people into cages is barbaric and should only be done in the most dire of circumstances. If people are harming other people, then there are ways that we can address that without putting those people into cages. Because putting them into cages doesn't do us any good anyway. People go into cages, they don't come out better people. They come out worse people. If they're not in a gang before they go in, they're in a gang when they come out. If they're not diseased when they go in, they're diseased when they come out. If they're not antisocial when they go in, they're antisocial when they come out. So we're not really accomplishing anything of value for our society by harming our citizens, by putting them into cages, especially for these non-violent, consensual crimes that our public servants think it's okay to be enforcing on us, and it's not. So we need to rethink all of these things. We need to sit down and talk about what public servants are supposed to be. We need to put in a foundation of restrictions so that they're limited in their powers, and so that we don't just get to vote them out in 4 years if we don't like what they've done, because what they've done has harmed people in protecting these corporate buddies of theirs. That's a serious, serious crime. We need to get back to common law principles about what a crime is and whether people are punished or not. Common law principles were about having justice symbolized by an older woman and blindfolded and all that would represent, and holding a set of scales. And on that set of scales, if they could prove beyond any reasonable doubt that it was you that did the damage that was done to some victim that exists, and they could find a dollar value or an amount that damage was worth, well, that's what went on the one side of the set of scales. And on the other side of the set of scales, a penalty that they could levy against you, because you're a free person. And this is a group coming to say that you're accused of something, and then if they can prove that you did it, then there's a penalty that they can launch against you. But that needs to be brought into reason. And all these things we've evolved over a couple hundred years to find reason. And what we've lost in this world is reasonableness. We've lost sight of who it is these public servants are supposed to work for, what we are as the powers that are actually the ones in control here and in charge here. And that if we're not hurting anybody else, that we need to be free to do whatever we want to do and don't do what we don't want to do, especially if we're not hurting somebody else. And that all of us have that responsibility that goes with that, to not just not hurt other people, but to prevent other people from harming people as well. And that's why I have this show, and that's what I'm trying to do here, and that's what I've been trying to do for all these years, is to get those people that are harming other people to stop doing that. And in the prohibition and the attempt to prohibit cannabis, they have hurt millions of people in extremely profound ways, including everybody that's not even involved with cannabis, because it's our tax dollars that are being used to do this. It's the prohibition of cannabis that causes people to hate the police and fear the police, and that puts the police in danger, and that costs us money, and it costs us all these other things that are valuable to us in our society. So that's why we need to rethink our whole democracy. And we need to use this whole cannabis prohibition exercise as a way to expose the corruption that's going on. Because there's no way that cannabis should be selling for anything by the gram at all. And it certainly shouldn't be selling for 100 times what every other plant that's out there grows for. And it shouldn't be controlled as if it's dangerous and explosive and contagious and all the things that you might put restrictions on, because it's none of those things. In fact, if we had reasonableness, and if we had public servants working for us, and if we lived in a world where we were free people and we had a society where we could trust our governments, then our governments would be shouting from the rooftops about the value of cannabis, and they'd be pounding themselves on the chest, telling us how good they are at making sure that everybody gets cannabis in all of its forms that needs it, and anybody that can't afford it gets it for free, and that everybody can really afford it because it's not very expensive, because it grows like a weed, and it doesn't take much to produce, especially if you're doing it by scale. So that's my rant for the end of the year here. I remain upset about the way things are going. I remain very upset about the closing down of medical dispensaries, the blocking of access to people for medical cannabis. It is absolutely outrageous. It is such a travesty. It is so harmful and devastating to so many people out there. I meet every day, because of who I am and what I do, I meet so many people every day that tell me of the struggles that they're having with opioids, to try to find cannabis, to get the medical cannabis that they need in their lives is very, very difficult for people. And the prices that they have to pay, if they're daily users, they have to be rich. And it's just not right. And I'm all about what's right and what's not. And like I say, that's why we do this show. So there's a couple of things also in the news today. Well, I think I'll mention this too, because in one of the previous shows I talked about 10 good reasons why cannabis shouldn't be prohibited, and I'll just quickly go over those again. It's a pain-relieving, anti-inflammatory, safe herbal medicine. It's a violence suppressor, a seizure-ending sleep aid, and all of those other medical things that it does. So all by itself, it should not be prohibited because it does all those wonderful things for people, and it's a plant that you can grow in your garden. It's a fantastic alternative to opioids. Opioids that help people with serious emotional and physical pain, that can be offset with the use of cannabis, especially in the form of high-dose edibles. And using high-dose edibles is way more fun than using opioids and has way less consequential side effects. So that's a good reason to not prohibit it as well. It's a green alternative to fossil fuels. It would replace all of our toilet paper, and we wouldn't have to cut down trees for toilet paper anymore because that's disgusting. There's just not enough tax dollars for going after cannabis users, suppliers, and growers because there's so many other serious problems in our world that we just don't have the money and resources for that. So public servants shouldn't be doing that on our behalf, for sure. The consequences of trying to prohibit cannabis are just extreme, with organized criminal groups having to defend their turf with violence and guns, and every time that there's somebody shot trying to protect turf, that's $1 million out of our tax dollars in trying to investigate that, and on. That all goes for that reason alone. Just because of the unintended consequences, the violence that results, the gangs, and all of that, there should not be the prohibition of cannabis. It's racist. It's an attack on people that are poor. The corruption that exists. I mean, look at what's happened here. Cannabis now being legal, our governments think they can get away with having their friends be in charge of selling it and growing it to us and make thousands of dollars per pound on it. That's preposterous. We shouldn't allow that type of corruption. And that's, for that reason, cannabis should not be prohibited. It's just a plant. This is supposed to be a free country with public servants. And mostly because you're a free person, you have a natural right not to be bullied by anybody. And in a world with cigarettes and alcohol and pharmaceutical drugs and white sugar and pesticides and all of that kind of stuff, well, it's just nobody's business but yours if you want to use cannabis for whatever you want to use it for. So that's kind of the end of my rant. We got to stop doing this. I'm hoping 2020 is going to be the year when we get clear that cannabis should not be prohibited, that there's great corruption going on in our society that we need to address before they figure out how to take over, use technology, and lock us all down and prevent us from using anything but what they sell us. So there you go. Let's have a great 2020 and change these things. In the news, there's not a lot. I've got 3 different continents covered. I want to say that Chicago is legalizing adult use of cannabis and growing at home tomorrow. Good on them. And they're also going to expunge 1,100 criminal records that people had for simple possession of cannabis. Just a small drop in the bucket. There's 161,000 people in the Chicago area that are eligible for having their records purged with respect to cannabis. Isn't that disgusting? 161,000 people in just one city that have just criminal convictions for cannabis and not violence. And we're using tax dollars, and what that cost each and every one of those people and all of us as well is just disgusting. In Italy, they also are legalizing adult use and growing small amounts at home. They've yet to decide how much to do. There was great resistance, I will say, to that going on in Italy. The debate was fierce. And another name that will go down in infamy in my book of people that need to be mocked and laughed at for the years to come is Matteo Salvino, who says that drugs cause harm, so forget about being able to grow any or have them in stores. We will not have drugs in stores, and don't think about growing them, because the drugs are harmful. What
country is he from?
This is from Italy.
No, I don't think so. That was not Italian.
You didn't think that was Italian enough?
No.
All right, well, I'm fair. I'm easy at being criticized, but whatever. However he would have said that, that's preposterous. That's outrageous. That's ridiculous. There's drugstores on every corner in every city of Italy as well. Drug stores. Anyway, get me going, will you? It's 4:19. We're coming up to 4:20.
So wants to know where you got your coat.
When I got my coat online. It was purchased for me for an event that I did back in the day when I was hosting a Cannabis Cup. So yeah, you can find them online, and the first one they sent to me was way too big for me, so I gave it to Landlord, but he lent it to somebody else, so he doesn't have it for the show today. And that brings me to Landlord. Hi, Landlord.
Hey, boy, you talk for 20 minutes without a breath, man. It's time to light up. It's 4:20, all right?
That's what I'm supposed to do.
Oh, light up. There's a joint
All right.
right there. Dude.
So,
Hi, I'm the
landlord. He's the
Hey,
landlord.
yeah,
Happy
yeah.
New Year, landlord.
Happy New Year, Neil.
I told you we'd have a surprise
Hey.
co-host.
Oh, yeah, I borrowed these from Elton John, eh? He was in town, so.
He was in town.
Yeah.
I actually saw him driving around in his black SUV, great big SUV Cadillac limo there. Going to record stores.
He bought records.
Bought records right next door here. Yeah.
Happy 420. Hey,
He
this
rocked
is a
my
lot.
world.
I can't.
So also, for the 420 session, as always, we have 8 out of 10 Glenn from CannabisCannaMatch.ca. And we have another surprise guest joining Glenn on the couch, and that's J-Mac. Are you from anywhere, J-Mac?
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
Wow, this is all. You know, Neil, you amaze me. You totally amaze me. You. I have some questions for you.
No, that's for later.
Well, I know, but I just know you totally amaze me. You're always out there in the community helping the people with Van Du and helping people. You know,
I'm just having fun.
you know, I envy you in a way. If I was in better shape than you, I tell you, I'd be driving around.
You're out there a lot.
I try.
Oh, we got a special joint coming in from Glenn here.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, Glenn.
Nice to see you too, Michael.
Actually, for those people, my real name's Steve.
Oh, Steve.
But
Oh, yes.
they called me Landlord for many years because in the 60s. Anyways, thank you for that, Thomas. I saw you earlier and you're writing that up. I have my own group. I like hanging out with these guys. I get a little wisdom, you know. But yeah, 420.
Let's ask the guests what's new here.
No, I'm not. I don't have much. And it's good gathering for the end of the year at the show here. And it's your 20th show. We're heading into 2020.
got the-
Appropriate.
Hey, Neil, do you want to help us with this one?
Oh,
We have priorities during the 420 session. And they involve passing joints around.
Everybody today.
All right.
You put, whoa, you put that in your holder.
Oh.
And J-Mac, anything going on new for you?
I got some plans in the work for this year.
Okay, that's good.
I wanted to design a bike trailer to go raise money for those who need meat, because
Need meat?
who need weed.
Need weed.
Medicine.
Who can't afford to get stuff like me? I'm in the boat where I can't afford to go nothing, but I wanna. Literally, I want, like, this is like in a couple year time. I wanna be able to go across Canada with a homemade shit. I'm high as fuck. This meat's really good. Fuck, $420 awesome.
Take another
Take a
puff.
puff, yeah.
You're gonna go across Canada helping people get weed. Well,
Yeah.
that sounds like a good project.
That
Yeah.
would be quite. That'd be like a Terry Fox thing, but you're going
Nope.
for health, for
Nope.
other medicinal purposes.
I'm looking into this all-enclosed solar bike,
Oh, and I don't.
and I'm gonna make a 6-foot trailer to
see.
Canton, all solar panels, and I'm gonna go from coast to coast.
Wow.
And once that's done, and I'm still able to do more, I want to go from Canada all the way down to the United States, then Mexico through Mexico, down to Tijuana, all them places.
Now,
Oh my
J-Mac,
God.
you're
That
going to have
is
a
a
problem
very
crossing the
ambitious
borders if you're going to be collecting weed for people doing that now.
I'm not collecting weed.
Oh.
I'm collecting money to get to society.
Oh, I
so
see.
they can support
Gotcha.
the
That's a
community.
better thing, yes.
I'm not. Here's the thing, guys. J-Mac will not be giving weed on the trip.
Yeah.
I'm not carrying weed on the trip.
Well, you can carry it in on
Except for
Canada.
except for my stuff that I use personally myself, I
Yes.
will not be giving any weed. I'm going out there to raise funds to go towards companies who want to help others out with need. Because
see.
right now, I know how hard it is to get weed because I'm disabled and I don't work, and it's damn near impossible to get weed.
Yeah.
But I wanna help those who need weed, who can't afford weed, because you all know what it's done for me in the last 5 years. If you can do that for me, and I'm lazy, and I'm lazy to begin with. So if it can make me not lazy and work and overcome all my shortcomings, then I'm gonna help. I'm gonna invest and I'm gonna help out anywhere I can. So I'm looking for supporters. I'm looking for people to join in the trip too. So message me. I'll see you later on some more shows in the year, and I'll let you guys know all about my plans. So please keep tuned and help those in need, because what Neil is doing and what Glenville is doing and what J Martin is doing, it's amazing work, guys, and I wish I could do more, but you know, I'm grateful for the work you have done.
Well, I hope that works out for you, J-Mac. That sounds like an awesome trip. It's pretty ambitious, but you know, you got to be somewhere. You could be anywhere in the world, so you may as well bike there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like riding bikes, so it's like, why not mix two things at once? Bike ride across Canada, help and get weed.
Cool. So what's new with the CannaMatch plan?
Well, we had 100 people sign up this month.
Nice.
Yeah, because I've been advertising the free 500 credits, so
there's 100 new people on
100 new people already. Yeah, so we're up to 3,654 now.
How many?
3,654.
And
That sounds like 10 a day for a year.
Almost, yeah,
You
but
could
it's
smoke weed.
Yeah.
You could smoke weed with 10 new people every day for a whole year,
On
and
CannaMatch.
still have one more left at the end of the year, or
Yeah.
4 more left at the end of the year that you didn't get to,
yeah,
unless it's a leap year.
unless it was a leap year.
In
Yeah,
which case you'd be 6 people short.
Yes.
And next year is a leap year, so you need
Is next year a leap
you
year?
need 6 more members, folks.
Oh.
So there you go.
So then next year being a leap year, my birthday will skip a year, so I
That's
guess
like
it'll be
speed dating.
Tuesday. Yeah.
That's total speed dating. You're gonna smoke weed with 10 new people every day
Oh,
for a year.
When we could do something like that? Speed dating with weed.
Well, kind of because weed slows you down a little.
Yeah,
bit.
I was almost thinking it'd be like that commercial. You can't drink it slow if it's quick,
Maybe the
right?
Lay's potato chips. I bet you can't eat just one. I bet you can't go real fast.
Yeah.
I always celebrate my birthday 3 days in a row. The day before,
Yeah,
okay, the last day of being 61 years old.
yeah.
Then the birthday, 62, and then the next day, celebrating that.
Well, you're into your 63rd year at that point.
60, going on to
That's
63rd,
why there's
yeah.
the
61,
last day of the 62,
Yeah.
and then
Oh.
there's the 62 day itself, I guess, and then there's
Yeah.
the first day of the
well,
63rd
anyways, I
year.
party for 3 days. I make my own birthday.
I'm coming up on the
When's your
55th
birthday?
year.
July 30th.
Ooh, there you go.
Mine is January
wait, no,
21st.
no, now
So
you know.
basically the day before Family Day here in BC, right?
Yeah.
August 1st is Family Day, isn't it?
I'll celebrate Family
Or BC Day or something.
Hey,
It's
yeah,
BC Day.
August
Yeah.
1st, yeah.
Yeah, BC Day. Yeah.
Glenn lost his big joint.
I know it's gone somewhere. It
Here it
got
comes,
lost.
it's coming,
Yeah, it's
coming
gone.
back. Here you go, here you go.
That's
That's all right. Don't worry.
I didn't get any big joint yet.
Yes, you did. I passed it to you a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was not a really big one, but it
You
was
just got
short.
high, J-Mac.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah,
happened there.
yeah, yeah.
That's it. It's good to be high. It's
You know, if you got problems, smoking weed is pretty good because you
Oh.
forget them.
Yeah, you can forget them. Yeah,
You can,
Yeah,
yeah.
but also you can forget other things too.
It all depends on how you use it, right?
Yeah.
It's on how you use
How many times have you smoked a joint and then walked out of the house and left your kids' keys in the house and you've locked the door? You know, twice.
I'm a
I've had to
key
crawl,
person.
crawl in my window because I can lock my door on the bottom. It has a bottom lock, so you
Yeah.
just lock the bottom, right?
Yeah,
and
and walk
left the
out,
keys
you
sitting
like-
on the stove or on the table in the living room, and I gotta climb in the window, go get my keys.
I try not to do that kind of thing more than once or twice.
No, I've done it twice in 7 years, so not
there
too
you go,
bad.
twice.
Not too bad, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Not
well-
up to 3 times. You're not senile yet.
Not yet, no, or dementia or anything.
I think if I was born like 20 years later, they would have said I had ADHD or something.
Oh, yes, probably.
They would
eh?
have put me on Ritalin or something like
They
that.
put me on chloropromazine for 6 years as my
Oh
child.
my
So I
god.
just had to learn how to deal with my easily distracted self.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I do have some
Cannabis
strategies.
helped me with
I'm
that.
all about strategies.
Yeah.
I read a book, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, way back in the day. That's the name of the book. It
Yeah.
was like the 5th one in a series of books by the authors that wrote it. It became kind of the staple of people that were therapists
Mm-hmm.
and using language therapy for people. But it was all about strategies.
Yeah.
It was all about, we have all these different strategies that,
Mm-hmm.
that we use for doing all sorts of different things. And the thing that you're trying to do and the strategy that you're using in many cases, there's other strategies that would work better than
Yeah.
the one that you've become in the habit of using. You're not gonna take
Oh,
that?
hey, I just passed. I'm sorry.
You think we're learning more to maybe teach kids to deal with their problems of medicating them now than as they did as you and I were growing up? Because I was drugged like 3 times a day, 500 milligrams chlorpromazine. If I didn't take it, they shot it in my ass, right? So for 5 years, I was drugged right out, right? I didn't learn any coping
They're still
skills.
drugging kids at an alarming rate.
Yes. Are they still doing it, eh?
Yeah, I'm still coming across stories of really young, like toddlers, basically
Wow.
being given
Really?
medications to help them with their attention deficit.
Wow, as a
Yeah,
toddler.
3 years old.
You
It's
know,
like everyone's
it's a huge moneymaker for the pharmaceutical industry, for sure. And it gets people starting using drugs early on in their life. It becomes routine. It just
Yeah.
becomes the thing to do. And we should all really think 2 or 3 times before we put any pills in our mouths about what's in those pills and
Yeah.
what do those people really know that are giving us these pills. You know?
man.
Yeah.
And every one of them that you take from a pharmaceutical company, you're going to see a huge list of possible side effects.
Possible side
many
effects,
of them
yes.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yet it's become the norm, and
Yeah.
it's become the kind of the church of the modern day.
'Cause we
There's the
see mom
doctor's
and dad have
office,
done
you
it,
know.
right?
You don't
Take
pray
a
to
pill.
God to get healed anymore. You go to see the man in the white robes that is your doctor.
Yeah.
And no matter what's wrong with you that you tell him, he's got the answer for you.
Yeah.
He's going to scribble it on a piece of paper, and somebody's going to give you some pills, and you can take that. But you can just as easily for that probably take nothing,
Yeah.
except use strategies within your own mind of how
Yeah.
to get your mind onto positive things and those types of things, and even that will heal you physically.
Yeah.
But if you need other help, that every pill that they make is based on herbs and,
Yeah.
and the dissection and understanding of how herbs work.
Yeah.
Because we're made out of plants.
Yeah.
And that's what heals us as plants.
Yeah.
And the pharmaceutical companies have just figured out how to isolate the active ingredient in the plant that's doing certain things for
And
us.
give it to us.
And then mass manufacture it synthetically and
Yeah.
then sell it to us for huge profits. So
Yeah.
go back to the plants.
I don't
eat a
even-
good diet. Keep your mind right. Don't allow yourself to dwell on negative thoughts and dwell on being sick and dwell on being hurt. But dwell on having an abundance and dwell on having an attitude of gratitude and all
Yeah.
those kind of things.
Yeah.
Well, talk
there you
about pills, man. I
Pills.
tell you, I used to joke about pills, just like the Matrix, the red pill, the blue pill.
Yeah.
And then I asked, why did the native take the pill? Because it's white and it works. And now that was bad.
Wrong color for
Wrong
you.
color. Now
Wrong color.
Yeah.
Wrong color.
I'm a heart patient
Yeah.
for over a year now, and they give you more pills. I got an orange and white one together. I got a white pill. I got to take a blue pill.
And I'm not telling you not to. I mean, it's a hard issue, and
I fight
not
it.
that pills don't do any good. They do sometimes. But we need to think about what we're taking. We need to really think hard about what we're putting in our bodies and all that kind of stuff. So I guess we did our session, guys.
I guess
That was
so.
fun.
Yeah.
I'm
Fun.
sorry, but I'm really not going to see you guys till next year now.
I know.
I know,
It's,
right?
it's going to be such a long wait. I
It's
Neil,
gonna
like,
be so
You can make do without me until then.
I think I can.
All right.
I think I can.
All right.
I can
All right.
manage.
You put in for an
You can
extension
manage?
too if you want.
I don't know if we want to extend this year because it's
Very
been
good.
such crappy. We
Yeah,
gotta let's go for the 2020 and hope that 20 is a really good number.
Familiarity breeds contempt, right? I mean, we're seeing each other every week here. I don't know how you're feeling about me, but
I have
still love you.
no contempt yet,
All
my
right.
friend. No, we're good.
Thanks,
We're-
J-Mac, for coming in and sharing your dream with us. I hope
Yes.
that works out for you.
Yeah, I'll let you
And,
guys keep informed.
We'll move on to the Martin Medical Moment. So, the Martin Medical Moment, this is 20 episodes in now, and for those of you that are just tuning in for the first time to the show, it's a segment in the show where we talk about what we're doing to try to further the access and get reasonable access for people with respect to medical cannabis. People have been using medical cannabis legally here in Canada for the last 25 or more years, and now we've so-called legalized recreational cannabis so that everybody gets access to cannabis, but don't buy that stuff, please. It's not fit for consumption yet. Hopefully they'll be able to change that, but for right now, for many reasons, don't buy the non-medical government cannabis. It is not something that you want to consume anyway. Talk about not trusting what you consume. There's about 30 different approved chemical sprays that they're using on that. If they don't irradiate it, they have to use a bunch of those sprays. And the idea is to kill the microbes, which also kills the value and it kills the soul of the cannabis. And the whole soul has been taken out of it anyway, because the legalized cannabis world is all about protecting the interests of government insiders and corporate people that want to sell you cannabis that you can't trust, and use those profits for continuing to put people in jail and to prosecute and persecute people that are growing for themselves or trying to get access to cannabis outside of the government system. And so it's completely immoral. Don't give them your money, and you're not missing anything, because the product is old and it's dried and it's overpackaged and it's way overpriced, and you don't need to consume that stuff. Your local dealer and your local grower will have way better cannabis than that. But the real shame of it all is that they've used this so-called legalization of non-medical cannabis to shut down the medical access to cannabis. And as Judge Allard said Judge Phelan said in the Allard case, the storefront access to medical cannabis in the form of dispensaries is crucial and at the heart of access for medical patients. And so it's just absolutely obscene that our governments are going out of their way, using our tax dollars to block access to people with respect to medical cannabis. And part of that has been the shutting down of medical dispensaries. There's been a whole bunch of them shut down in Vancouver here. But about 4 years ago, they shut down a dispensary in a small town in Saskatchewan that had been operating for over 3 years and servicing a population of about 1,000 people and having about 1,000 members, and sticking strictly to the book as best they could to the model that Health Canada was looking like they were going to approve, and hoping to be grandfathered in and approved as a medical dispensary. But instead, like they've done in so many other cases, they just came in heavy-handed, seized property, arrested people, laid charges, and shut down the access to medical cannabis in that small town and in the other places that they've done that. That medical dispensary was the Martin Medical Dispensary, and Jerry Martin was the owner of that dispensary, and he's still being persecuted by the government with our tax dollars to try to bring punishments for him for intending to help people and doing just that with no victims that have been harmed in any way. Another obscene example of how corrupt our system is and just how wrong things are. So Jerry's here with us every week to update us on his case, and as we talk about the other cases going on in the pursuit of freedom through the courts. And with no further ado, Happy New Year, Jerry Martin.
Happy New Year.
Good to see you, sir. It's been quite a year.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So,
A little late.
yeah.
Carry on.
I think I got another one here somewhere, too.
I got one over there somewhere. I'm good.
So, is there any new developments in your case?
No.
Okay,
I
we're
don't
still
think
waiting
so.
for
Nothing
some
really.
things.
Yeah.
You don't have a date yet set that's been given to you by the prosecution?
No.
And there's now perhaps something in the works to change things down the road even more, and we'll wait on those announcements. So.
Yeah. I may join a couple other dispensaries and share resources. And
A very good idea, because there's so many kind of overlapping cases going on right now, all about the same thing. People deserve to have access
well,
to
it
cannabis.
is. Yeah, and it should be a group, anyways. I think, instead of just everybody fighting for themselves, right?
It's obscene.
Yeah.
I mean, who are you fighting against?
Yeah.
Our government?
Yeah, the Queen. Yeah.
The Queen. Yeah, the Queen.
The Trudeau cartel.
Yeah, speaking of, resetting our democracy here, this is just a corporation
Yeah, that's all it is.
owned by the Queen of England.
Yeah.
That's what Canada is. And we answer to her. Mm-hmm. And all these laws that are on the books all had to get okayed by her, including the Cannabis Act.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's disgusting. We need to reset our democracy. This ain't right.
She's not going to be around
This
much
ain't
longer.
Well, but the next one up will, keep
they'll
the
follow
same thing
through.
going if they
True.
can. I mean, they don't just own the land; they own our asses. Apparently, they own us too. It's obscene. It's obscene. How did we get here? I mean, we know how we got here. History shows how we got here. It's what we're going to do about it now.
It repeats itself.
Well,
Tends to, anyways.
so far.
Yeah.
Maybe if they invade our land, maybe we can go invade their land now. Go put a
That'll
teepee.
probably happen one day too. That,
Maybe all the non-weed or all the weed haters.
They will
We could
fall.
ship them over to England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll build a canoe just for you.
There's a bunch of weed lovers in England
Yeah,
too.
there's
right?
a lot of weed lovers in England.
So we'll let them come over here.
Yeah.
Just to make room for the ones that we send over there.
Sit the uppity.
I don't know we have that much room in
over
Canada.
there.
Yeah.
We'll keep that.
We got lots of room in Canada.
I know.
Lots of room. Don't kid yourself.
I wanted to put the no vacancies.
A lot of my family's from over there.
Your who is your family? From?
Yeah, they're from, yeah.
I have not done the
Live in Scotland.
23andMe or the
Wales.
Ancestry DNA, but
Yeah.
I think that my grandfather had something to do with there was some English blood in there somewhere, but I don't really
Oh, I
know.
think everybody was somewhere else.
And Mom doesn't remember
At least
now,
once.
and Grandma's
Most
gone.
part.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
So you had other endeavors going on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still happening? What's going on with that?
Yeah, no, I put that, it's going good. Redesigned the box. You got the letter again? So yeah, that new,
cool, yeah.
that'll work. I'll trade you that.
Okay,
You
I'll-
like that
I'll
one?
mark that for
Yeah,
you.
the new 1P LSD box is coming out. So the study looks like it's going good so far.
How long is the study going to last?
It'll probably be a 45-day study, I would believe.
And it hasn't commenced yet?
No, there's processes we have to go through. We want to get FDA approval and things like that. So
Right.
you get it right. It's a massive.
But in the meantime, you still have this available for people.
I do, yeah. So I'm using 1P LSD, which is not a salt that they list in the CASA. So you cannot sell lysergic acid, diethylmine.
Yeah, people
or
aren't buying
salt
any
there.
illegal off you.
No. So it is considered a research chemical, and when people think that, they think bad. But research chemical, all it means is that the FDA hasn't tested that chemical. It's been used in many studies. James Fadiman actually recommends it in his microdosing course as well.
Right.
So it is. A fairly, I would consider it a safe product. In fact, Dr. Knowles even had me remove the warnings off the box about driving and using machinery,
Right.
because he says that it shouldn't,
Right. There's no evidence that it would do that.
it should enhance your workflow, and that's
Right.
what it is. It's the enhancement of normal functionality if you take it as a microdose.
Right. I guess that's why you would be taking
Yeah.
this, to try to function a little more normally and
Yeah.
within desired parameters, as it were.
Yeah.
So that's really, really cool. Is there still opportunity for people to take part in the study?
We haven't released anything yet. It's going to take a little bit of time. Once that is ready, though, you can find it on the website, microdelics.ca.
People can apply through there?
Yeah, they can apply through there. It's free. You do have to upload your ID, and we do want some medical proof, even though it's not illegal.
Right.
We want to know that people are using it for some kind of medicinal benefit. And they're not just popping tabs or drinking a bottle for fun.
People that are taking part in the study.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. If you want to do a spiritual dose, I would just encourage that you do it in a safe setting, with the proper intentions in mind and in a safe place.
Forewarned is forearmed, and that's pretty much all people usually
It's a better
require.
experience for yourself, and it cuts out the bad trip in a lot of cases. And if you do go down that road, you've got someone there that'll guide you back into the right place.
Right.
Yeah.
Used properly, it can be a benefit to most people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I took a microdose before I came today, a couple hours ago, and drove here, no problem whatsoever.
Do you notice any effect?
Yeah,
You do, eh?
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Your mood is elevated? Is
Your
that what it
mood's
is?
elevated. You're just more comfortable in situations. Your motor functions way better. Your focus is better. It's just all around. I like to say with the mushrooms, a better day. It's just a better you through the day.
Yeah, when I look into what's coming out of the studies that are being done, it seems like there's a whole hell of a lot of benefits that come from
LSD was
psychedelics,
once the most
research-
researched chemical in the world. They didn't even know there were serotonin receptors in the brain until there was LSD. They thought they were, so it was, and still is probably the most researched drug in the world. And it's coming back to light now. There's many uses for it.
It's gaining a lot of respect. Many different jurisdictions, even in the United States, are, they're actually leading the world.
Yeah, well, Dr. Knowles and the Delos Psych Research Group are doing an LSD study out of Silicon Valley, and that's who I'll be partnering with, as well as the Beckley Foundation, which just completed a study on Alzheimer's, being completely safe for Alzheimer's, and helping with that as well.
Right. Well, that's great. More acceptance for plant medicines, the better.
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't call LSD a plant medicine, but it's a psychedelic, and it's definitely a medicine for sure.
It's derived from spores off of plants, so I guess it's not plants themselves. It's
a synthesized
And it's synthesized
Yeah.
in this case for sure. It's just the active ingredient. as
Same
well.
with the new product I'm coming out with, the 4-ACO DMT microdosing kit. So it's similar to the psilocybin. It is a legal analog though,
Right.
which is again been left out of the CDSA. So for people that are just looking for the alternative and want to kind of stay within that legal guideline, which I kind of do until court's over with at least, and for the study purposes we need to do that as well. So.
Right, and then Dana Larson's got microdosing of
Yeah,
mushrooms
so
available
yeah,
as
if
well.
you want to try real mushrooms, I would encourage you to check out the mushroomdispensary.com, I think it is.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah.
And the city of Vancouver severely quashed a motion that was brought forward to
Yeah, I
not
was
allow the
watching that.
dispensing of mushrooms. So that's sort of leaving the door open to having those dispensed. And that's a good thing, because along with high-dose cannabis edibles, mushrooms do have a role to play in helping people with addictions and with the opioid crisis.
Yeah, for sure. Sure, MAPS is doing really good work too with the MDMA, so that should be legal soon. I think a lot of things will change in the next 5 years or so.
I think it's going to be a very good year ahead. I'm really looking forward to a large amount of things that are happening. A lot of these court cases are going to be heard this year. Yours will be dismissed, but
We're
maybe
open.
not.
My mom just sent me an article that 87 or 84% of all white collar money laundering charges from 2012 or something to 2017 have been dismissed.
Is that right?
Yeah, free ride for them, but I'm charged with that, so I sent that over to my lawyer.
See?
That would be nice to have that dropped.
Yeah. Well, there'll be some type of resolution with respect to your case and numerous other ones. Heidi Chartrand's case, which was heard just recently, has been put on hold. It was just put off. It wasn't heard. It was put off until the 15th of January because the Chris Enns case, which has got a publication ban going on, was going to be used in her case by the Crown, and she wasn't given proper notice about that. So they put it off till the 15th, and then we'll find out what happens then. But I do suspect it's going to be quite a dynamic year with respect to these things, and there needs to be low barrier access to quality medical cannabis. And that's the bottom line. There's no way around that. That's what the government is going to have to allow for a number of different reasons. And that just means that the model that they've got going of non-medical recreational cannabis will not be able to compete with that. And they're going to have to rethink it. And good on them for having to rethink that. But that's what's going to happen this year. I'm looking forward to that as well. There's a number of things happening. And so, yeah, like my other guests, I guess I won't be seeing you till next year now, Jerry.
All right, man. It's going to be a long time.
Try to hang in there till then.
Catch you later there.
Have as much fun as you can tonight.
All right.
Or maybe tonight's the one night you shouldn't tell people that. Have as much fun as you can. You're gonna have too much fun.
Oh, I'm going to have some fun.
Go ahead and have fun. That's the whole purpose of everything, as far as I'm concerned. If you don't have fun while you're living your life, then you're not doing it right. And there's a lot of problems out there, and a lot of things we need to work on to change, and a lot of bad things going on. But while you're changing them, I think the right way to do it is have as much fun as you can.
Yeah.
So good on you. Thanks for coming to the show every week. I love it. And we'll see where it goes next year. I'm looking forward to more updates and Martin medical moments.
All right.
Thanks,
have a
Jerry.
good night, Neil.
All right.
My New Year's resolution: smoke more.
Can you smoke more?
I like to.
You could, eh?
I'd like, oh man, me and that beautiful flower that we're trying to fight for.
Yeah.
That flower's helped a lot of pain.
My goal for this year and every year is to make it easy for people to smoke more.
Oh, you're doing very well. I take my hat off to you. Oh, I don't have one on. Sorry.
You're not wearing a hat today.
Yeah, I'm not wearing a
Oh, I
hat.
thought I had some. Jerry,
Yeah.
take one of these. This is from Amber McIntyre.
All right.
She was so wonderful in making these for me.
hey,
I didn't ask her to do that.
yeah.
She just did that. She likes the
She
show.
made a lot of stuff for me. back
And so
in
I
the
thought
day,
anybody,
too,
and I don't have too many of them. I'm gonna have to get some more made up. Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
man.
Is that infused? No, that's actually okay.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
So thanks, Amber, for that. That was awesome. And I'm only going to give them to the people that are guests on the show because, I've already got a dozen or more that I have to give out for that. So that's really cool. So as I mentioned before, we're going to have a surprise guest today as well. We got a surprise co-host, and J-Mac was on during the session. And today the surprise guest is me. Are you surprised?
I'm surprised.
You're not surprised.
No,
'cause
I'm
I,
not surprised.
I told you already.
Did you tell me already?
You guys are probably
That's-
surprised
you know
'cause
how-
nobody else
You know
knew.
how Jerry was talking earlier about Alzheimer's? Well, I got some timers, so I don't
Got some-
remember.
Oh, okay. So it could be a surprise to you
I'm
too.
surprised, yeah.
There you go.
And you wanted me to
Who
learn
knew?
something.
Nobody knew.
You know.
I knew, but that was
I
it.
knew, but there you go.
So, yeah, I'm going to fill the gap today, and you're going to ask me a bunch of questions, and just to complete the record, that most of my friends have been on here telling their side of the story, so I guess I get to tell my side of the story too. So I'll go take a chair
You
in the
go
hot
sit
seat.
in the host in the hot
go
seat,
sit in the hot seat.
and the landlord via Grand Marshal is going to move over here.
All right.
Yes, welcome to the Landlord Show, and my name is Landlord, and we're going to have a questionnaire here for Neil Magnuson. I know his name's on the back here. It should say Landlord. Don't you have a different screen on the back there? But that's
Yeah, we
okay.
should have got that together.
Should have got that. That's okay. Next year. That's next year.
It's all just practice.
Like I said, Mr. Magnuson, Neil, I take my hat off to you, but I left it at home today.
That's
I-
you took it off.
I do have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
And the history. How did you end up quitting your job to become an activist? I mean, just to quit.
I was a guy in the mainstream. I worked in the mainstream construction industry as an insurance restoration expert, estimator, and tradesman as well. I had a truck full of tools, and I drove around to fix things, and that's what I did for a long time. And my marriage ended, and I had some time on my hand, and I was always a weed smoker. And so when my son turned 16, he wanted to smoke weed with me for the first time and have that be a big moment in our lives. And it wasn't a good moment for me, actually. While we were smoking weed there, I was realizing that now my son was going to go down that same path that I'd been on. And as much as I loved the weed, I really hated the prohibition of weed, and I hated being a criminal. It really bothered me a lot. I didn't like being called a criminal. My dad had wanted to be a policeman, and I wanted to respect the law. Brought up as a right-wing Protestant Christian person, not really, but I'm in that home and setting, and I certainly wandered from that path. But I respected the morals and the ethics, and I wanted to be a good law-abiding human being, and yet, that was really conflicting with smoking weed, and now my son was going to smoke weed. And so that very synchronistically led to us spotting a poster on a pole that was talking about a protest against the pot prohibition happening on April 20th in 1999. And so we went to that, and never missed one since, by the way. But that was our first 420 rally at the Art Gallery in 1999, my son and I, and he was 16. And for the next 5 years, we went to every 420 and Cannabis Day and Global Marijuana March that was happening. And I was quite obsessed with the whole idea about this not being a crime, that I didn't like the idea that it was a crime. I didn't know that much about it, even though I'd been going to these rallies for all these 5 years. I really didn't know the truth about prohibition and the value of cannabis and all of those different things. I just knew that it shouldn't be a crime, and I had a little bit of history in my pocket that I carried with me, which was Emily Murphy in an article in Maclean's magazine that they reprinted from 1923, talking about marijuana, the new menace, and how you could die a horrible death being addicted to it, and you'd rape and murder and have super strength, and it was just this horrible new drug. And so I had that going on for 5 years, and then David Malmo-Levine, who was putting on these pot rallies, and I'd been helping him with now as a volunteer for these 5 years, he asked me if I would help him move. And while I was helping him move, he asked me if I'd be his business partner in renovating a space that he wanted to use to help teach people the history of the drug war and sell cannabis from. And that was the Herb School. So in 2004, in August, on a long weekend as a side job, I went to this run-down building on Hastings right by Main Street, and using materials that I had gathered over the last year or so from different jobs that I'd been working on, we renovated that space. And during the course of that renovation, I read The Emperor Wears No Clothes, the book by Jack Herer, and really had my mind blown about all the different things that cannabis could be used for, how valuable it was, how much it would compete with, current industries, the cotton industry and other industries. And I was really quite upset that this plant that had all of this value would be prohibited with the criminal law, and that they'd call me a criminal for using it just to protect these interests. And then on that Monday, around 4 o'clock in the morning, we never slept, mind you. We never left that long weekend side job of mine. We never went home to bed. We ordered in food. I had all the building materials necessary to do the job that I'd already moved in there before that long weekend happened. And so on the last day, I turned chapter 7 in The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and it talked about the nutritional value of cannabis. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that cannabis was also of nutritional value after all the other things it was valuable for. And so I just started connecting the dots in my head. I sat back in the chair. I thought about this thing that I went to about 3 weeks before that at Ambleside Park, where Greenpeace had put on a thing, and there was ladies in a tent there talking about world starvation. And I'd had a conversation with them about how many kids were dying of starvation around the world. And that was horrifying, and I couldn't get that out of my head. And then here's this being presented to me about this plant that you could grow, and it grows anywhere, and it doesn't require fertilizers or pesticides, and it adapts quickly to different environments. And you could be feeding starving children with this. And it just hit me that, they could be dealing with world starvation by allowing these people to grow this plant and feed their own people, and they can't because the United States government is running a worldwide prohibition against this plant. And I just started to cry. I had an epiphany. I had a moment in my life where I cried my eyes out, and I just thought, these greedy bastard corporate people are willing to starve babies to death to protect their money interests and make cannabis illegal and make me a criminal and all that stuff. It was just a moment in time where everything changed for me. And I knew at that moment that I couldn't continue doing the job that I had to do something about what was going on here. And so at about 4:20 in the morning on that Tuesday morning when I was supposed to be going to work, I called my boss because I thought he'd pretty much be just getting out of bed at that time. And I said, Fred, I'm not coming to work anymore. I can't go to work anymore. I just learned this stuff about the prohibition of cannabis, and I got to do something about it. And, I'd worked for him for quite a while as a heritage carpenter, but I never knew this about him. But he said, I used to be a hippie back in the day, and I understand completely how you feel, and I hope no hard feelings. I hope you have success. And so that was kind of my last day working in the mainstream. And I moved into that building at Main near Hastings, or on Hastings near Main there, that we called the Vancouver School of Drug War History and Organic Cultivation. And I moved in there, and we started selling cannabis right away to people that would come into the area, and doing drug war history walking tours. And every night I'd go to bed and say, universe, what can I do? How can we fix this? And most mornings I'd wake up with some new idea about somebody that I could contact, or something that we could do, or some poster we could make up, and all that kind of stuff. And it became a real center for activism. We planned the 420 rallies out of the Herb School. We planned Cannabis Day, the Global Marijuana March, all kinds of poster runs, all kind of protests at the courthouse. Every day we met there with the activists that would come there and plan and do all these things. So that's kind of what happened to me. That's how I ended up quitting my job and deciding that I needed to do something to solve the prohibition of cannabis. Up until that point in my life, I had in my daytimer, I always had a thing that said my goal in life is to add value to every person I meet and every situation I'm in. And it changed that day to my goal is to help end the prohibition of cannabis and bring freedom to human beings. And so that's still my goal. It's been like 15 plus years now. Not much has changed in what I'm fighting against and what I'm trying to do. So I hope that answers your question.
You missed out one thing, but no, I'm just kidding. No,
I missed out a lot.
That was real good. That was really good. Thank you. I just, I had one question.
Sure.
Me, it was 12. What year did you start?
15.
Okay. So.
I'd already been drinking for about a year growing up in Surrey.
I didn't ask you about your drinking problem. I just asked you smoking your weed.
But I got to tell you now, because you did ask that. And I started drinking. I grew up in Surrey. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 10 years old in East Vancouver there. I would steal my cigarettes from either the gas station or the IGA up on Kingsway there. And I smoked about a pack and a half a day for 3 years, and at 13, my cousin Keith Magnuson made the Chicago Blackhawks, and he sent me some equipment through his brother Wayne that I used to join Hockey League, and I had to quit smoking the first day that I tried to make a team because I could feel like a steel band wrapped around my chest. And that day I just quit smoking. I said, if that's what smoking does to me, I quit. So I was lucky about that. But I did start drinking at about 14 out in Surrey there. I drank like a fish until I was 19. And at 19, on my 19th birthday, my friends said, hey, let's go get drunk. You're legal. And I said, yeah, well, if I'm allowed to do this, then I'm not really interested, because I'd been sick on alcohol a lot during those years. Lots of stories of puking and waking up on people's front lawns.
Eating a porcelain bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember those back in 1970. Well, let's not go there.
Well, that's fine. You can tell me your history too.
No.
One of these days I'll interview you.
But just all the outreach you do within the city of Vancouver and surrounding areas, and helping people with your Vandu, and my biggest I have a number of different questions, but I'm going to skip to this one. I wish I was there with you. Freedom tours across Canada. What was that like?
All right, so I've been operating the Herb School for several months. So now we're into early 2005. And I was doing a drug war history walking tour. David had developed this tour of explaining the drug war by going through these different areas of Vancouver, because a lot of it started here. So from Chinatown to Gastown to Main and Hastings and stuff. So I was doing all of that. And one day I was sitting in my bedroom. I think I was watching TV, I'm not sure. But a brilliant white light broke through the side of the wall and zapped me right between the eyes and just stayed focused on me. That's my memory of it. I'd never experienced anything like that. I had no respect for people that said that they did. I didn't know to believe or not believe, but I kind of didn't think much of it. But that happened to me. I had a vision. I had a brilliant white light hit me between the eyes, and while that was happening, I was writing with a pen and paper that I always keep beside me. By that time in my life, I always had pen and paper right there. And automatic writing, because I wasn't like looking down at what I was writing.
A light literally came down. It's
A brilliant white light literally broke through the side of the wall and hit me between the eyes. And while that was happening, my hand was writing. And what I wrote is that I was going to go to Ottawa for Remembrance Day and talk to the Prime Minister, because every day I was waking up trying to figure out who to talk to and how to further this. Well, that vision, I wrote down, I'm going to Ottawa for Remembrance Day to talk to the Prime Minister about what freedom is supposed to mean. And I'm going to do the drug war history walking tour in every town along the way. And I'm going to meet all the media and all the activists and all the mayors and all the police chiefs, just like I've been doing in Vancouver. And I had that vision, and I wrote all that stuff down. And from that moment on, a bunch of strange synchronistic things started happening. People would walk into the school and say, hey, you need a website, I can do that for you. And just the right people at the right time. And the list of little minor miracles that piled up in front of me during that time was incredible. A team of people was put together. I tried to do it, or I wanted to do it right away. That first June, I wanted to get out on the road. But the people that were helping me with it, there was things that needed to be done. And I had told them if we didn't have it proper before that time, that we would wait another year. And we did. We waited another year. And so in 2006, with all the naivety that you can imagine, I headed out on inline skates to skate as much as I could while spending 5.5 months on the road, going from Victoria to Ottawa for Remembrance Day. And that was a phenomenal trip. If I had any idea of what that was going to be like and result in, I probably wouldn't have done it. Although looking back, it's one of the greatest things I ever did for myself. But the logistics were very difficult. I didn't have a dedicated vehicle. I was relying on different people from town to town, and many of those connections hadn't even been made yet. But it was a leap of faith. I had helped found in Canada the chapter of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And so I had, armed with pamphlets, I was going to every police station that I could find and talking to them about prohibition from a policeman's point of view, from this group called LEAP. And there was so many stories from that I won't get into it. But
one story. What comes clear to your mind? What was This any city in from
Okay,
here to Ottawa.
I get into Winnipeg,
Oh, Winterpeg.
and I'm not inline skating across Canada anymore. I've done as much as I want to do. It's cold now. It's starting to snow, but I am still skating around Winnipeg, and I'm skating down the road. There's little patches of snow on the boulevard. It's lightly snowing, and there's two guys walking down the sidewalk, and they say something to me as I go by. And I have an ear infection going on, and I can't really hear what they said. So 3 times I asked them, and I end up skating right back to them and saying, "I'm so sorry, I didn't hear." They said, "We're just wishing you a good day, lad," basically, right? And so, what are you doing, and who are you? And so I told them I'm on this trip across Canada talking about rights and freedoms, and I'm on my way to Ottawa, and I've just inline skated about 1,000 miles on the highways to get to here. And from here, I'm just trying to get to Kenora. That's my next stop, and that's what's going on. And his name was Mike. He was about 6'7", and he said, "I got to buy you dinner. You meet me at this restaurant tonight at 6 o'clock, and I'm going to buy you dinner." So he buys me dinner, and after dinner, we're back at his hotel room with this other guy that was there, and we're looking at pictures of this semi-trailer truck, this beautiful truck that he owns, that he had let a guy try to drive for him. He was doing loads back and forth from Manitoulin Island to BC or to Calgary for a new subdivision, delivering these limestone rocks. And his cousin owned the quarry in Manitoulin, and so the company was ordering these rocks to be shipped from the quarry to the subdivision. Well, his cousin, they were paying $10,000 a load to bring these limestone rocks back to Calgary.
Wow.
He thought if he bought himself a truck and hired a driver, between him and his cousin, they could clean up on this. And so that's what he was doing. But the first driver blew the motor in his truck. So he went to the Mac dealership, and not just dealership, that's where they build them in Winnipeg. And they were building him a brand new motor for that truck, and he was just waiting for that. So he said, when my truck's ready, I'll take you to Kenora. So that's what happened, is we put my big Freedom Tour sign. I always had an escort vehicle when I skated on the highways, but I wasn't going to skate anymore on the highways. I was just looking to get to Ottawa now, by Remembrance Day. But we put my big Freedom Tour sign on the back of his truck. He rode bobsled. He didn't have a load on at all. And Mike was the craziest guy. We went not just to Kenora, but all the way to Manitoulin Island with him. And then I stayed at his dad's place in Sudbury just before I went to Ottawa to meet Stephen Harper and do the Freedom Tour in Ottawa. And then got back, and it had been such a harrowing thing there. Mike was crazy as could be. He owned a beautiful, beautiful 2005 Corvette built for racing, or with the racing additives that you can put on it. And at one point I had to say, "Mike, if you're going this fast to try to impress me, please stop doing that, because I don't like it." But yeah, he was crazy. He wanted to drive back to Vancouver. He said, "I'll drive you back to Vancouver after at Ottawa." No. I'd been stuck with him for 19 days leading up to Ottawa, and then another 19 days on after Ottawa, trying to get back home. And I haven't seen Mike ever again, but that's a story and a half. He owned this beautiful Corvette. He owned a beautiful pickup truck. He had about 30 vehicles. He was manic depressive. Apparently his dad contacted me sometime afterwards and said that Mike, in the trip with me, had been on one of his manic stages, which he goes through and buys trucks and does things. But since then he'd been depressed and in hospital. And so Mike, if you're out there, if you're listening, contact me, man. I'd love to talk to you. We had some really amazing times in 2006 on the Freedom Tour. So yeah, that's what the Freedom Tour was all about. I did it 2006, 2007, 2008. All 3 of those years, I inline skated 1,000 miles on the Canadian highways. I got to Ottawa all 3 of those years. I met Stephen Harper all 3 of those years. I was a little disappointed by the 3rd year that I hadn't given him my handout. I had shook my head at him but showed my displeasure with him the 2nd year. But the 3rd year, I managed to give him my handout, 12 pages of what the Freedom Tour was about. 4 things. It was about what freedom is, which is the right to do or not do whatever you want to do unless you're hurting somebody else. It was about what the role of public servants is supposed to be, and that's to protect every individual's right to be free. And it's about the consequences and the costs of trying to prohibit substances, because there's a whole bunch of consequences that are way worse than probably the drug addiction that you're trying to address in the first place. And the 4th one was all about cannabis and hemp and the industrial uses and the medical uses and the spiritual uses and everything about cannabis. So those 4 points were in my 12-page double-sided handout that I got into the hands of Stephen Harper in 2008. And symbolically, at least, he got that information. And so that I felt like at least he couldn't say he didn't know, because, I gave it to him. So now, we know that he knows, and he knows that we know that he knows. So maybe he can't keep doing what he was doing. But anyway, that's what the Freedom Tour was all about. I did 3 in a row, where I inline skated like that. And then I didn't go in 2009. I did inline skate the Malahat Mountain Range for the 4th year in a row on Vancouver Island. Got back into Vancouver, but unlike the previous 3 years, everything was not lining up properly. It was not working out like it should. My dad was ill. I had just recently moved back in with him to look after him in his place and mom. And I didn't want to leave my dad sick like that, and nothing was working out right, and I just decided I wouldn't go. So I didn't go until Dad passed away. It was one of the best things I did in my life, was to spend 2.5 years with my dad, living at his house during his last years. And then in 2011, he passed away, and it was in November of 2011 that I got a phone call from somebody back east. I forget who called me, and they just asking about how I was doing, and asked if I was going to consider coming back and doing some more educating about cannabis back east. And at that moment, standing in the den at my dad's house, the TV was on. I thought to myself in that moment of being asked that question, I thought about the mandatory minimum 6-month sentence that was coming in for anybody that was caught growing over 6 plants. I thought about how cannabis medical users were not going to be able to grow for themselves anymore because of the new ACMPR. And at that moment on the TV, Charlton Heston was standing on a big rock, being Moses, freeing the Israelites from Egypt. And he said, "Let my people go." I'll never forget it. It just sort of bellowed through the room. Right at that same instant when all those things were happening in my head, in that couple of seconds, I heard him yell, "Let my people go!" And I just thought to myself, let our people grow is the name of the Freedom Tour, and you're damn right I'm going to do it again. And, I'm going to pack up my stuff and get this ready, and I'll be back on the road next year. So in 2012, I did another Freedom Tour, the 4th one. I got a small amount of money when Dad passed away, and I used that to buy a vehicle with, and that became the Freedom Tour van. And Bob High painted a big logo on the front of it of a cannabis leaf coming out of the Canadian flag. And I went across Canada in that. I went all the way to the tip of Cape Breton Island. I went through Ottawa twice, once on the way to Cape Breton and the other time on the way back for Remembrance Day. And just an amazing trip on that 4th one as well. So I did 4 Freedom Tours. And yeah, on the 4th one, I didn't get to meet Stephen Harper. I had a plan that just came to me, sort of like the vision came to me, but not with a bright white light. It just sort of hit me when I started after Cape Breton Island, after Thanksgiving, on the way back to Ottawa for Remembrance Day. It just kind of hit me. What am I going to do at Remembrance Day this year? And I thought I'd arrest Stephen Harper. So my plan is to put him under citizen's arrest, just briefly, non-violently. Just say to him when I got the handshake, like I got in the 3 other years, that I just say, "Sir, due to investigations going on, we're placing you under citizen's arrest. You're free to continue with your duties till further notice." But he decided to take Remembrance Day off in 2012, which has never been done before by a prime minister. It's really very blasphemous and traitorous to do that, really. But he decided to spend Remembrance Day in China that year. And so my plan wasn't able to be accomplished. I thought it might end the drug war because just symbolically we could talk to the media about what freedom is supposed to be, what these forefathers of ours were willing to go to war for and put their lives on the line for, what freedom means. And so that's what I thought we could accomplish on that final Freedom Tour. I kind of had a bit of PTSD for quite a while after that because it didn't happen, and I was really had my heart set on it. That's what I thought we could do that time, but it didn't happen. So yeah, that's the Freedom Tour. What else do you want to know?
Well, while you were sharing most of that, I was thinking the same thing earlier. Let my people go, Moses, and then you had a vision there.
Yeah.
As a native, I get visions, but I haven't had any lately. I turn it off. I don't want no visions. But yeah, the vision, that's really awesome because I was thinking, let my people go earlier before you said that. Herb School.
Well, the Herb School was probably one of the coolest places on the planet at the time that it was there. It was a run-down, dumpy old building, rat infested, and all the rest of it in a really harsh area of town. But inside the herb school, once we got the renovations done, I put a new floor down and we painted it all up and ceilings and everything else. We had so many cool people there. You know, every day the activists of Vancouver would come there and sit around and tell their stories and talk about things. We had people from out of town. Woody Harrelson was there. We had other famous people that came there. And it was just such a wonderful thing to be a part of. Like I said, it was a center for activism where we planned all the different rallies and things that we did. There was such amazing energy there all the time. And it's where I learned about high-dose edibles helping with opioids, because we thought originally that the population of people that would come there and hang out with us and plan rallies with us and purchase cannabis off of us would be people from our community, the cannabis community, from down, 5 or 6 blocks down the street. Those that would dare venture into that hard area would come there, and that's who we thought we would be helping with access to cannabis. But it didn't take very long until most of our clientele were people right from that area that were involved with the hard drug and addiction and those sorts of things. And they would really curl our hair by telling us the stories of how they got to be where they are. And they were people from all walks of life, from every type of family you could imagine and every demographic, that had just had bad things happen to them, that they'd had trauma happen and shit happen, and they ended up cycling downwards and ending up in poverty and ending up down there and ending up being prey to the local drug dealers and things like that. And they would tell us that the edibles, especially, Lady Marijuana would make us brownies and cakes, and so we always had edibles available for people. And so the edibles especially, they would tell us, would really help them get through a night of not using any of the other drugs. And then people started telling us after a while. We were there for 3.5 years. And so we had many people that were there that had formerly been on the hard drugs from the area that had now gone straight just using cannabis. And they would tell us repeatedly that cannabis had saved their life. So the Herb School was all about that. We did drug war history walking tours. We educated people about the difference between use and abuse, the origins of prohibition, as we went through Chinatown, where we had the anti-Asian riots that resulted in the first ever prohibition of a drug federally in North America here, where the federal government sent William Lyon Mackenzie King here to do an investigation into the anti-Asian riots. And one of the things that he was shown when he was here were the opium dens where people were partaking in opium. And he was horrified by all of that. The white women that were, rubbing shoulders with the Chinese people and colored people and things like that. And so that whole inquiry actually just led to the Chinese people being punished and the smoking version of opium being prohibited federally. And then it was a few years, that was in 1908. In 1916, cocaine was added to the list of prohibited drugs. And then in 1923, cannabis was added with no debate, by the way, no investigation whatsoever. There was no dialogue. You can look at the records. It was a minister named Bellin that stood up. He was a Liberal minister, stood up in Parliament in Ottawa, and he announced that there's a new drug in the schedule. And that new drug was cannabis sativa, and they later put it as cannabis indica as well. But there was no debate about it because there had been that newspaper article by Emily Murphy, that judge, under the pseudonym that she wrote, The Black Candle. And that hype about this new menace, this marijuana coming up from Mexico that was, claiming youth as victims and causing people to be violent and insane and murderous and things, that there wasn't even any debate in Parliament about it. They just added that to the schedule without any investigation into it. So the Drug War History Walking Tour was all about teaching people about the anti-Asian riot and how those laws came into effect, through Gastown, where they had the Grasstown riots, because the local dealers, there was a campaign by the VPD to bust the local dealers in Gastown. There was over 100 arrests that happened, and that prompted the local businesses, activists, and people in Gastown and Vancouver to put a protest together in Gastown, and the police rode in on horseback and clubbed people and arrested people, and it's a real black eye for policing in Vancouver. And that resulted in the Vancouver police sponsoring a rally the following weekend where 15,000 people showed up or something like that. I forget the exact numbers, but a huge amount of people showed up, and there was no arrests except for a couple of people for being drunk and fighting. But those are some of the things we talked about on the Drug War History Walking Tour, and that's kind of what the Herb School was about. But inside we also had a museum that David had accumulated all of these different artifacts that we had in museum cases that I built there. And if you come to Cannabis Culture in Vancouver, and go to the lounge upstairs, on the staircase going up to the third floor, all the way up, there's a whole bunch of different depictions of the ancient and global use of cannabis and the other plant entheogens throughout history and throughout the different cultures. And that was all part of the expedition that we had at the Herb School, the exhibit, that we had at the Herb School. So that once we got done walking through the neighborhood with the people that would meet us out in front of Mark's store here, we'd get back to the Herb School, and then we'd go over the wall carefully and slowly and talk about the ancient and global use of cannabis and that sort of stuff. And all that stuff has since been moved here. We had a second location for the Herb School in the third year that we were there. We got a second location up the street that we were calling the Herb Museum, and really expanded the amount of artifacts that were on display there. But once the Herb School got busted, the Herb Museum closed down up there, and it moved here to Cannabis Culture. It occupied the second floor right where this studio is right now for quite a while. And then they were all sold to a collector down in the States. And I believe that it's touring around the States in some sort of a semi-trailer truck situation and visiting different places. I'm not sure. It might have a permanent home. I think if that's the case, it's probably in Detroit. But yeah, a huge amount of artifacts about the use of cannabis and other things were at the Herb School. It was a wonderful place. I don't know if it can ever be quite repeated the way that it was. These things come and go, and the times are part of that, and the times are different now. But for its time, it was definitely one of the coolest places on the planet, and a lot of good activism came out of there.
So just like, go back to Let My People Go, Moses. That's like the wall, the writings from the past, the history of you can see what it's all about, what has happened within the community of downtown Vancouver, the marches and the schools and everything. I noticed some stuff up there on the wall when I came up last time, and boy, it really amazes me, all those writings and that.
Quite a history.
And now my favorite event, my question to you is 420 and Cannabis Day involvements.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before I did the renovation that became the Herb School, my son and I had been two of the main volunteers at the Cannabis Day, the 420, and the Global Marijuana March, just because these events were being put on, and we had become enthusiastic, my son and I, about supporting these things. And so we just helped out, and we were there doing all of that. Now, when I did the renovations on that space and it became the Herb School, and I quit my job to move in there and operate that place, and I operated it for almost 2 years before I did my Freedom Tour, right? Because I said there was a whole year involved after I had the vision to go to Ottawa. So it was about 22 and a half months that I operated it with my son. We both lived there. We opened it every morning and ran it every day. And one of the things we were doing was doing these rallies. So we became, main organizers. We would have our meetings, my son and David and myself, and then a few people would be added as we went along in organizing these things. It got bigger all the time. My first 420 back in 1999, there was just a couple dozen people. We kicked a hacky sack ball around. We all got together and formed a circle and smoked weed at 420. And then it grew from there. And one of the things that we became conscious that we should be helping with was making sure that some of the people that would show up that didn't have access to cannabis and were poor people, because we got a fair amount of those coming to our rallies over time, that they all got something. So I took the job of getting the weed rolled up and forming a group called the Holy Rollers. And we roll up about a dozen pounds for 420. We roll up a little bit less than that for Cannabis Day and less than that for the Global Marijuana March. But that's been one of my functions at the 420 and Cannabis Day events, has been to coordinate the rolling of the joints, and for the last several years also the obtaining of the weed to do that with. So hitting up dispensaries and trading them promotion for weed and stuff like that. Another thing that came out of it was that in 2005, leading up to our first Cannabis Day rally that we were now actively involved with, I had been a little concerned about the O Cannabis that was being sung at Cannabis Day. And, stupid stoner versions, not very respectful or not very thought-provoking. And so before the Cannabis Day in 2005, I took it upon myself to write some lyrics that I thought would be, more thought-provoking and respectful. And so I did that. And that's become a feature at all of our rallies ever since. So since 2005, I think I've done it 15 years in a row now at 420 and what have you. So I'm really proud of that and happy with that. I think that that's helped to shape some people's perception of cannabis and what we're trying to do there. Other than that, I'll tell you, I've watched 420 grow from a couple dozen people 25 years ago into this absolute mainstream event with top name bands and, you know, occupying the space down there at Sunset Beach for the last 4 years. Certainly the last 3 years for sure. But even before that, our events are the biggest that happen in Vancouver. We pull off the biggest, best music concert and festival that happens in all of Vancouver all year long. Maybe the Olympics had a little bit of stuff that competed with that, but the level of participation that we get from the community, you know, well over 100,000 people show up, celebrate cannabis, all break laws, and you know, help to protest the laws and celebrate cannabis. It's a protestival, and it's just been amazing for me to watch it grow the way that it has. Part of it, of course, was throwing out free joints to people. You know, the pounds of weed that the Holy Rollers roll up, that the girls, the people throw out to the crowd. That attracts a fair amount of people.
Yes, it does. I know. I could vouch for you there because I was there last year at 420. I got to be with that native sister from the West Coast, Salish. I was honored.
Didn't you help us with the joint toss last year?
I didn't help with the joint. I wanted to, but maybe next year. But opening the ceremony at 420 to be on stage with, you know, and Cypress Hill there, it was awesome last year. I mean,
it is quite a sight, eh? People as far as the eye can see. You know, packed like sardines and all enjoying themselves, and there's no violence, there's no problems.
Everybody wanted to send a smoke signal at 420. Yeah, big smoke signal at 420. The skies were just smoking.
It is quite the mainstream event. Always unpermitted, always fought against by city Parks Board, at least somewhat council, even though the city hall and the parks people all work hand in hand with the organizers to pull it off and make it work. So yeah, it's quite an event. It's quite a history that something like that's unpermitted and flies in the face of what the city would like to have happen is pulled off in the major way that it is, with such a huge stage and big performers. And Cannabis Day has now moved to Thornton Park.
Yeah.
In 2015, Cannabis Day was almost on par with 420. It was closing in, I would say, on how big 420 had gotten. It was in 2014. It was just a real mainstream event right in the middle of Canada Day in Vancouver. So all these other events going on around it for Canada Day, all these people that are there for Canada Day that, you know, have to walk right through the center of the city where we're having Cannabis Day. It was a beautiful sight to behold. So a little bit of my history, I guess, that probably fits into this segment here is that we made such an impact in 2014 on Cannabis Day that we felt that the powers that be, the media, would all have to take notice and that they would have to do something. And in fact, every time we did a 420 or a Cannabis Day rally, we felt like we did enough, like change would have to happen as a result. But 2014 Cannabis Day in particular was something else to behold. Such huge crowds of people till late in the evening, so well attended, such a beautiful event. But what happened in 2015 or 2014 was that there was 2 people set up by the RCMP and led along a journey of planting bombs at the legislature. And that was to explode on Canada Day. And because of that, there was no media coverage of what we had done in the center and heart of the city. And all the coverage was just on these 2 that had been talked into, you know, going ahead and planting some bombs. The next year, the city tried to stop us from having our event at the art gallery. 2 weeks before Cannabis Day, they sent cease and desist letters to Jody. And the response was, well, we can't call off Cannabis Day at the art gallery. We don't really control it anyway. People just come there. They're going to come there whether we're there or not. We're there to try to maintain order and keep the chaos from happening and use it as an opportunity to educate people. But, trying to take it somewhere else isn't going to work in the first place. The only option they were giving us was underneath the Canby Street Bridge, a dirt lot that's now been developed. And that was not going to be suitable. We don't charge admission to anywhere. There's no tickets to refund. There's nothing like that we can do. So they decided that what they would do is stop it anyhow, and that they'd put up fencing at the art gallery to keep us from using it. But they only fenced off the side that we normally use. The other side of the art gallery was still quite a large space, and they didn't fence that off. And when we saw that they were fencing off the side that we would use, we went there, scoped it out, decided that we could still coordinate what would happen there, use the stairs as a stage, and still have our event. Well, that morning for the 2015 Cannabis Day was like no other Cannabis Day. The police that were there were not the usual police. These were hardcore dudes with sunglasses and arms folded against their chests with scowls on their faces, and they were everywhere at 6 o'clock in the morning. And they were going to do everything they could to prevent Cannabis Day from happening at the art gallery. So anybody that tried to drop off stuff to set up was not allowed to do that, was ticketed immediately, was not allowed to drop their stuff off. But eventually some people did bring in tents and started setting them up. There was a few tents that went up. Finally, a senior VPD guy showed up, and I went straight to him and said, we're going to have our event here today, whether you guys try to stop it or not. There's going to be thousands of people here this afternoon. We're going to sell cannabis to them because that's the protest that we do. We believe the laws against selling each other cannabis are immoral and causing most of the harm, and the selling of cannabis is the law that we break on purpose, and we're going to do that here. And it was a nice conversation with the older VPD gentleman, and he said he understood and knew all of that, and that they were going to cooperate, basically. I forget the words he used exactly. He said, we understand that, he said. So I said, well, you need to back off some of your men. You've got too many men here. We don't need them. They're causing a lot of tension amongst the people that are here, and you can have them go do something else. So I went and decided that because of the way he said what he said, that we were going to be good to go. And I pulled out some jars of cannabis and had them available to people. And after about 10 minutes of doing that, I could tell that the VPD little groups were doing a little two-step backwards, forwards, one step backwards kind of routine. And they were getting closer and closer. And there was a couple that wouldn't take their eyes off me. So I just folded up all my stuff, put it away, went and sat down on the grass, and watched as they continued to stare at me. So I had just said to my friend beside me that I was going to get up and go for a walk to see what would happen because they were not taking their eyes off me. And before I could even get up onto my haunches, there was a line of 15 VPD that marched in quick step, like Gestapo, came around the corner right where I was, and they just, some of them jumped on me, some of them surrounded the other ones. Another 15 came. There was a total of 30. We counted them over and over again, my lawyer and I, as we watched these videos over and over again. So 15 more VPD came marching in to protect the first group of 15 that were trying to arrest me. They jumped on me. We had been preaching hug power, I should mention, for all of our rallies. Hug power is where you hug the people that are they're trying to arrest. You don't touch the police. You yell at the police about how these are people that have not hurt anyone, that there's no one being harmed, that there's no need to arrest them, and you make sure you videotape it and you talk about how the laws are wrong. So there was people around me that tried to use hug power and hung on tight to me. And it was a big wrestling match between the cops and those people with me in the middle. And they honestly just about killed me, I think twice. Once for sure, because something collapsed my windpipe here. It was either somebody's forearm or a leg. I'm not sure what it was. There was a huge scrum that I was at the bottom of. But I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't get a peep out. And I wanted to yell so bad that I couldn't breathe, but, couldn't get a peep out. And just at the last second, the pressure was released off of my throat, and I gulped for air and didn't die. And there was one other time, I'm not sure if it was before or after that, where the police were pulling on me, my arms, and pulling so hard against the people that had a hold of my leather belt. And I felt like I was going to be a cartoon character and just like slit right in half, you know. But I don't think that nearly killed me. But it was a horrible experience being under that pile for sure, and thinking in that pile that this might be it for me. I really had those thoughts that I think it might be over when I couldn't breathe. And then, so that happened, you know, and they put me in the paddy wagon eventually, along with a few other people. On the way to the paddy wagon, David Malmo Levine decided that hug power should work better than that. And he tackled me like a football player right from the arms of the policeman. And, you know, David and I are now on the ground and we're back into another scrum and the police are piling back on again. And David's not going to let go. And I remember saying, you know, David, I'm beat up pretty bad here. I think they're going to arrest me. I think you probably should just let them arrest me. And so we ended up in the paddy wagon. But, you know, I had my side bag with me, the same one I got here. And I got my hands out of the handcuffs pretty quick. And so we had a session inside the paddy wagon, and we blew smoke into the other compartments so Bert and Cam, they could get some too. So that was pretty funny, although it wasn't very funny for Cam because he got out of his handcuffs as well, and they caught him out of his handcuffs 3 times. And the third time when they caught him out of his handcuffs, I had blown a bunch of weed smoke into his compartment there to help him get high. And so that was the first compartment they opened was his. Wow. And so right away they're like, what, now you're smoking weed and you're out of your handcuffs again? And so, oh man, I won't tell you where he had a key, but he had a way to get out of those, and he was a smart dude. But yeah, they didn't treat him very well after that. And for our side, you know, I was good. I got my hand slid back in as best I could to the handcuff when they pulled me out. I was the last one to get pulled out of the paddy wagon and processed. And as soon as the cop came to me, I said, I pulled my hands up and I said, look, man, this is just killing my thumb right now. And he looked at it, he says, well, because it slid down onto your thumb, he said. So he loosened it off and put it on. It was pretty loose, so it was okay. But yeah, that happened in 2015 there. And they really, they put a real damper on our Cannabis Day rally. Like they really did knock the stuffing out of that. The following year in 2016, we decided on Thornton Park as an alternative location, and it's a great location. We had a lot less people come and want to be vendors, and it's grown quite a bit since then, but it really did have the stuffing knocked out of it by what the VPD and the city did there. So that it's a different event now than 420. 420 is this over-the-top event with, you know, 120,000 people at its peak, or however many are there, but it, you know, packed like sardines as far as the eye can see. We've got hundreds and hundreds of paid vendors. We pay for a huge stage and all kinds of other services and lots of security that we pay for. It's a real major event, 420. Whereas Cannabis Day is a lot more laid back. We haven't over the years now charged anybody for the booth space. It's first come, first serve. And we don't have a big budget for it at all. We don't have many sponsors for it. We do provide entertainment in the form of good musicians and entertainers during the day. Lots of great activist speakers. And it's a real wonderful, much homier, down-to-earth kind of event than what 420 has become. Still an awesome event in its own right. And yeah, so that's kind of the skinny on those ones. The Global Marijuana March, I've been a big part of organizing that as well. I've been the MC for several of those Global Marijuana Marches alongside of you, who's been our what are you doing?
Grand Marshal.
Grand Marshal.
Cut the show. No,
my brain's a funny thing. I just forgot. I didn't forget what you do. I just forget what the term was. For a moment there, my brain went blank. But yeah, alongside you as the Grand Marshal, we get sometimes up to several hundred people, but just a drop in the bucket compared to what we get for 420 for sure. And yeah, we have a fun time on the Global Marijuana March. It's a lot of fun taking up the streets and smoking weed, walking down the middle of the street, and that kind of stuff has always been fun as well. So very happy to be part of all those rallies in Vancouver. Yeah.
Yeah. And just so you know, for 2020, Monday, April 20th is 420. And the Global Marijuana March is May 2nd, the first Saturday in May.
And all of April is 420.
Oh, all of April is 420.
All of April is
this-
420
this
this year.
This is my year. Oh, right
Yeah.
on, right on, right
So
on.
hopefully, I mean, plan events for any day in April next year.
Yeah, you
to
get together
celebrate 420.
at Thornton Park or somewhere, and
Whatever you want to do, wherever you want to do, every day in
let
April is
people
420.
know, let's get that flower power out there. I say that let's really get that flower be known. I'm tired of cigarette commercials and beer commercials. I want to see a marijuana commercial.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. It
The,
is.
the hypocrisy is
That's
just
the government for you. They
it's
you owe
just
the
beyond the
government.
pale. It's what I've been saying since the beginning. It's why I had to quit my job to try to do something about this. There's just things that are unreasonable. And this whole attempt to prohibit this one plant in a world where there's alcohol and commercial tobacco and these other things, this is as upside, backwards, inside out as you can get. Like, come on, people. Let's be real about this. We're all adults here. It's 2020 coming up, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's the 21st century. Time
let's
for change, people.
Let's
Come
stop
on.
being stupid about this. Let's stop just turning a blind eye and thinking that if we just don't think about it and don't talk about it, maybe there won't be government corruption. Government corruption is big time going on right now, not getting any better until we do something about it. And we need to do something about it. And that's why I'm still very passionate and on the clock here doing this, because we're not there yet by any means. These corporate influences that have their way with our public servants is bad news for us, and it's going to get worse and not better if we don't do something about it. So we can use this whole deal going on with the attempt to prohibit and now over-regulate and restrict cannabis to expose the corruption, because it's only corruption that's driving the prices of cannabis. That's the only reason you can't get medical cannabis at really good prices. It's a plant, it works great, it grows easy, it should be cheap for everybody. The only reason it's not is government corruption. And that's a way bigger issue than anything to do with cannabis. Cannabis is sort of the linchpin of this way bigger issue, and that is, how are we treated as people by these governing bodies that are overseeing us? And that is a huge issue that we need to address in this world. So
It
that's
is
kind of what's going on with
very,
that.
very sad, Neil. I used to work for the government of Canada. I worked for Transport Canada, and I worked for Indian and Northern Affairs. I know how the government monies, taxpayers' monies, get wasted.
It sure does.
Because
they don't care.
It's just sad,
They all take a great big piece for themselves, and then they don't care what happens to the rest of it. Get the job done, maybe that's a good thing. Then they can get reelected next time. But it's so corrupt. It's so corrupt. And in the cannabis file, there's a lot of people making a hell of a lot of money right now selling cannabis to Canadians that have no business being there doing that based on who they are and what they did in their life. And it's only corruption that has put those people in those places. It's those people that have decided that they can kick the shit out of the activists. They can wipe out the original, vibrant, entrenched, beautiful community of retailers and producers of cannabis, and they can do all of that, which is what they always wanted to do, which was say fuck you to the activists and stop the cannabis market. And they can also monopolize the sale of cannabis to people and make all of their buddies rich by doing it. It is a huge conspiracy. It is a horribly corrupt fucking plot that's going on here. They listened to us as activists tell them what the right way to legalize was, what it was that we expected with legalization, and they literally did everything the opposite of what they were told that should happen to make it right. So not happy.
I know. In the government, we can go on all day or all week or all month.
Well, I've been doing it for about 15 years, and I ain't stopping any time in the near future that I can see. So
yeah, I'm right by your side.
It's kind of the job of all of us to do this, because it affects all of us, and it affects the generations to come. We are all, a crew on this journey into the future here, and there's some serious shit going on with this ship that we're on, and we need to get at it. So, have as much fun as you can, but find your niche. In figuring out what to do about how your governments are abusing their power and being in contempt of us as free beings here.
All right.
What else you got?
One more.
Only one?
CSP with a question mark.
All right. So we have an overdose crisis where people are dying of tainted street drugs that have been laced with a very, very strong form of opioid, concentrated opioid named fentanyl. This is a parallel situation, pretty much, to what happened back in the late 90s with another strain, a very potent strain of heroin called China White that was killing people, and it became a crisis situation here. And out of that crisis came the supervised injection site, as the street people formed together and set up places where people could go and inject their drugs under supervision, so that if they were going to overdose, they could not fatally overdose. That was fought against by the governments here. The municipal government fought against it. The federal government with Stephen Harper certainly fought against it. But we won the city over, or the activists won the city over with respect to understanding that having supervised injection facilities was not just a harm reduction facility that would help the people that were involved with the drugs, but it would also save taxpayers a lot of money, and it would save our society a lot of trouble, as these injection facilities could help guide people into treatment and into resources and into lots of other things. So it was accepted by the city, and they, on behalf of Insight, which is the city, the people's group, the activists formed a group called Vandu that advocated with money and grants from Coastal Health on behalf of the street people. That formed the supervised injection site, which they called Insight. And so this all happened, and that was the solution at that time, was to have these supervised injection sites so that people wouldn't die. And the city then went and lobbied the federal government, and eventually they got a Section 56 exemption, and eventually they got to exist as a legal entity, and that goes on today. In 2004, as I mentioned, I opened the Herb School, and right there at Main and Hastings, where the drugs that are there were all part of this epidemic that had happened just a few years before. I learned, as I mentioned, that especially the high-dose edibles were very effective for people that were involved with those opioids and other street drugs. And so when the overdose crisis hit again, in 2015, basically, right away I thought, well, one of the things that we need to do to help with this crisis of people dying from tainted street opioids is to have easy access to cannabis high-dose edibles. And right at that same time, 2016, the city of Vancouver, in early 2016, the city of Vancouver decides that they're going to regulate the unlicensed and illegal dispensaries that are operating in Vancouver. There was over 150 of them. And part of that regulation process involved banning the sale of high-dose edibles. So that just really struck me. You know, we need to get high-dose edibles to people. Now the city is banning the sale of high-dose edibles. So I got to do something about this. So I decided that we should just make it as easy as we could for people to get the high-dose edibles that couldn't afford them, because they are available online to people. But to the people down on the downtown east side that are struggling with poverty, that's not an option for most of them. So I thought if we could just give it away to people on the downtown east side, then that would probably force the government into having to allow it through the rest of the city in dispensaries. So it would bring back high-dose edibles into dispensaries. And because cannabis is so effective for people with not just offsetting the use of opioids and hard drugs to kill pain, but it's also very effective for a lot of other things for people, a lot of other medical situations that people have going on, depression and physical things, and a lot of different stuff, and including pain. So that would demonstrate that cannabis should really be provided to people to help them with their medical needs, so that people that were low income, that were on disability, should get cannabis provided for them with taxpayer dollars. And that if we did that, we'd have a much healthier, happier population, and it would save us a bunch of money. So that was the idea I had behind going down and giving out cannabis on the downtown east side, was to force cannabis edibles back into dispensaries, and to eventually lead to people on disability getting cannabis covered as a medicine. And so I went to Vandu first. Vandu is the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users. It's this group that formed of the street activists funded by Coastal Health to advocate for not being hurt by the drug war, etc. So I went to Vandu. I said, here's my idea. I think we should be giving cannabis away to people and making it as easy as we can for them to get it to help offset the use of the other drugs. Vandu's totally up to speed on cannabis as a harm reduction tool. They have been forever. They understand that. In fact, in 2009, they asked me to dispense cannabis from their offices, and I did that for almost 3 weeks until the Coastal Health lawyers decided that they would shut down and shut off the funding to Vandu if they continued to dispense cannabis. So they know it's a harm reduction tool. They gave me unanimous approval to go to City Hall to ask for support and acceptance by City Hall to do what we're doing. And so that's what I did. I went to City Hall. I presented to the councillors and to the mayor in the open forum. This is my idea. This is what I want to do. We're going to do this. I would like you to support us in doing this. They asked me no questions. They listened to what I had to say. I then tried calling a couple of the councillors that I knew were opponents to what I was doing, like Kerry Jang. He would hang up on me if I started saying, like, look, you're a doctor. You should know the difference between the harms from alcohol and the benefits from cannabis, and click. He denied in a newspaper article that he hung up on me, but that's politics for you. So nothing from the city. Around that time, early January in 2016, I went to the police board. I presented to City Council in November of 2015. In 2016, I went to, I think I got my dates right. I went to the Vancouver Police Board, and I put my name down to speak to them. And I did two things there. And actually, I'd planned to do that before I planned the CSP. And so the first thing that I did that wasn't about the CSP was in asking them to investigate the federal government, because that's what I had done on the Freedom Tour, especially in 2012, was I was asking all these police stations to investigate the federal government. Why would they prohibit drugs? Why would they prohibit cannabis? In the face of what the 2002 Senate report said, in the face of all the evidence, they shouldn't be prohibiting drugs. It's a crime that they're doing that. It's a protection racket. It's doing it for corporate greed, and they should be investigated. So I laid it all out for the Vancouver Police as to why they should investigate the federal government on that note. And then I explained to them about our project, that we were going to give out high-dose edibles to people on the downtown east side, and asked them just to be aware that we were doing that and not to interfere. And I had the chief and a couple of his deputies come and shake my hand and thank me for what we were going to do and wish me all the best. And that was all I expected from them, and that was all very positive.
Different tribe, right? Not chief like me.
Yeah, not chief like you, and your chief's very, very different, actually. So, even though they think they're similar. But, so from then, I couldn't get the city to support me, but I did spend some time trying to make that happen. I didn't just leave it at that. Robert Laurie's father is a lawyer that's been dealing with the city of Vancouver for about 30 years, and he spent some time trying to get city council to acknowledge what we were doing and support us, with no success. A couple months into doing that, I had also been lobbying my friends that ran dispensaries about helping me get donations, in whatever form, to try to do what I wanted to do. And after a couple months, I had enough that I went to Vandu and I said, I got a bunch of donations, and maybe if I set up a table here and start handing them out, do you think that's okay? And so I did that. And that was 2017. In February. Yeah, in February of 2017, in early February, I went there and I set up this table and I just gave out, and I put together packages for people of what I thought, 4 or 5 edibles, and there you go. They said, when are you going to come back? I said, I don't know. As soon as I can get enough donations, I'll come back, because I wasn't going to just stop doing it. I thought we should do this I wanted to make it a program that would last. And so I went about getting more donations, and I came back again, and then I came back again. I did that. And I did it 3 times in a row on a Saturday at noon, just because that's how it worked out. I got into that rhythm of going about all week and getting what I could get, and by Saturday I felt like I had enough. But I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't tell anybody that I was going to go there on Saturday at noon. It was all just me. I just woke up at Saturday, did my normal routine, left the house, went to Vandu, got there at noon, and gave out a bunch of edibles. Well, I did it the 4th time, and there was a whole lineup of people. There was maybe 50, 60 people lined up outside Vandu. And I just got out of my car and I looked at them and I said, are you people here to get cannabis? And they went, yeah. I thought, wow, that's incredible. And I guess now we have to do this every Saturday. So we did do it every Saturday for a full year, 52 weeks every Saturday. And I'll tell you that when that happened, when there was 50 or 60 people lined up to get cannabis from me that day, there was also a handful of people meeting me at my car saying, I want to help you. What can we do? Can we help you in some way? And it was magical. It was another case of miracles in front of me, sorta. but really, realistically, these are what we call miracles. They are synchronicities. If you take a step forward, the universe will help you and give you a little push from behind and bring things to you that will help you in whatever direction you've decided to move in. I believe all of that. I believe that having a vision in your mind of what you want and and an attitude of getting that and believing in that and having gratitude, I think that gets you all of that. I think that's all part of my belief system, that creative visualization and having an attitude of gratitude and moving in some way towards what your goals are kicks things into gear, and the universe helps you in these ways. And it certainly did with the CSP. So much like the Freedom Tours, I had a bunch of people show up and say they wanted to help me, and in no time I had pamphlets made up, I had signs made up, I had a steady crew of volunteers. We had a real system of how to deal with all the donations. And after the first year of 52 weeks in a row, I went back to the Vandu board and I said, our Saturday lineup is kind of out of control, and we do have some issues with it. There was some people butting in. There was a little bit of rudeness from time to time. It was just a really, really large lineup of people every Saturday. It was kind of chaos on the street. And that was my only concern. When people asked me what they could do as volunteers, I'd say, well, I got pretty much everything covered, except I need some people with smiles and a good heart to go out there and just try to bring some positive energy to the lineup. And for a while, we were giving out joints to the lineup and tried to do it that way. But so the Vandu board, I said, I would like to do it 3 days a week instead of 1 day a week. And I'd like none of those days to be Saturdays so that we can maybe disperse the amount of people coming amongst those other 3 days and not have the chaos that's going on here now. But Vandu's a very busy place. They advocate for a lot of different groups. They've got a group there that deals with people that have problems with alcohol. They've got methadone groups. They've got all these other groups that meet there. And they said, well, we can't give you 3 days a week, but we can give you 2 that aren't Saturday. And so that became Sunday and Thursday. And so for now, we're just about finished 2 solid years of Sundays and Thursdays. We're almost at the 3-year mark, heading towards February here. And we have a volunteer crew of about 15 people, of which you're one, Landlord. And thank you so much for coming down and bringing your positive attitude down there and helping out with our security and all the other stuff that you do and all these other people that help us. It's just incredible. In fact,
I think you give over 200 packs probably or more now.
Oh, way over 200 care packs every time.
And you have like 6 people rolling joints, a couple people bagging, the others edibles, and you have more people with the gummies. So keep those donations coming in.
I can't thank the donators enough.
It is awesome.
We've given out we're closing in on 200,000 high-dose edibles have been flooded into the downtown east side over those 3 years. We have made a huge difference. We forced the city into passing a motion saying that they will license low barrier access to cannabis for the opioid crisis, which means high dose edibles, and in recognition of what we were doing there. We've got Dr. Malloy at UBC, who has been conducting studies with our group and with other groups and putting his information out in the form of peer reviewed studies, speaking to the effectiveness of cannabis as a replacement for opioids. There's a lot of buzz throughout the downtown east side, and there's a lot of media interest as well, and there's other groups across Canada and in Australia and in the United States that have contacted me and are wanting to do similar things down there and in those places. So we've had a huge impact, and it's all because of the donators for sure. I can't thank them enough, and I can't thank them enough. I've got a list of them here.
Yeah.
We've now moved into the CSP segment. I know as co-host you knew that. And the CSP segment includes a video that we'll play in a moment here. But just while we're on the topic of the donators, there's a lot of donators that I'm not going to mention because there's some that I need to mention that are just there for us all the time and have been for so much. Move the Movement. Twisted Extracts has been just so phenomenal in the help that they've given us.
That's these the medicinal, over here, right?
Yeah, those ones there. Yeah. They high dose 80 milligrams of THC in that one, CBD in the peach one, and it's a half and half THC, CBD indica in that one.
See, that was a good one.
Yeah, I can't thank them enough for their support and what they've done, and And the medicinal cannabis dispensary, Dana Larson's dispensary, they've taken such bad hits by the CSU, closing down the one on Hastings Street, and he's come back as a get your drugs tested place right out of his own pocket to help people
Great guy,
to
Dana.
address
I
the
like
opioid
his bus.
crisis. They've been so instrumental in helping us for all of the time that we've been there, almost a full 3 years. Weeds, Glass, and Gifts were the first ones that really gave us substantial donations that made it work, that I could go there those first few times. And intermittently throughout these 3 years, they've given us just huge donations that have allowed us to include dabbing in what we give out to people and how we help people at the CSP.
Future donations is my address, okay? Just kidding.
Black Creek Cannabis has been providing me with ingredients for our bakers since the last 420, and just so huge in doing that. Joe Pepper, just an individual activist, citizen person,
makes
a
those
wonderful
brownies.
woman,
Oh, yeah.
provides us with brownies every time we're there, and she's been doing that since the beginning, and other things she does for us as well as a volunteer. Dirty Dave. He's such a connoisseur, such attention to the organics and the cleanliness and all of that to do with cannabis. He's at the leading edge, in my opinion, of keeping cannabis, whole and good. And he's been helping us for so long as well with his canna caps. Michael the Cookie Monster with his really wholesome cookies that he puts together, just fabulous. And he's there every Sunday. The stock market has come in now in the last while and been a regular donator of cookies, edibles, and weed. And we need more flowers. We need more trim.
flower.
We actually have a situation. We do need to get more trim and more flower at this point. And so thanks them so much. And the other one I want to mention is John Murray. And there's so many others that help us a lot.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
he
sorry,
brings those,
there's even some regular
yummies.
donators,
Oh,
but
yeah,
John Murray, has been bringing real
Way to
wholesome
go,
food
John.
for people, warm food for people, and he loves what he's doing, and he shares that love. He can't be there without spreading the love. So, I love the fact that we don't just dispense cannabis, but we do dispense love to people. We do care about these people. They become friends, and now the lineups are not. There's no problems with the lineups. There's no rudeness. There's no butting in. There's nothing. It's a wonderful community gathering of people that come together, and that's just fabulous. So, also want to thank Jen and Andrew and the Holy Rollers and all the other volunteers. Rob and Chris on the door, and so many others. I've got Tony taking the pictures for us every time. And Debbie doing the videos for us all the time now. So many volunteers, so many wonderful people that are helping out with this. I want to mention Colleen Corley, I guess, as well, because she was so instrumental in the early days of when we were once a week and giving us huge amounts that allowed us to build the momentum and get the respect that we've gotten to be able to be where we're at this point. And I know there's a bunch more. Please forgive me, all those other people that donated, the BC Bud Depot and BC Bud guys and so many more. Forgive me for not mentioning you, but we're running out of time, and I am conscious of the clock. There's a video that we can play for the CSP, and we should probably do that now.
So today's a busy day here at Cannabis Substitution Project. We have extra things, we have donations, we have clothes, we have socks. So we're all Christmas spirit here. Our holy rollers are over there. And none of this would, of course, happen without Neil. We got a beautiful dog. And here we have our holy rollers that are rolling. Hi, how are you guys doing today? Good? Got lots of buds. We got lots of donations. We even have blankets, shoes, and a tiny bit of food. Here's where we make our packages up with our edibles, our high-power edibles. John, I guess you made infused baked potatoes and infused ham?
Infused ham, infused baked potatoes.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Legalization world of producers thinks that they can charge like enormous amounts of money for tiny little bits of CBD and THC.
How much do they charge?
Well, they're putting 2 milligrams of THC into these drinks that they've got. 2 milligrams is nothing.
Nothing. I wouldn't
It's
even get a buzz off
It
of
would
that.
be a tiny, tiny little speck of weed in the palm of my hand for 2 milligrams. There's just nothing.
And how
there.
much do they charge for it?
And so they're going to charge $8 for these drinks.
Wow.
A drink that would otherwise, you'd pay $2 for it, and even then, that's a big markup from what the actual costs are, like in the grocery store and what have you. So, like $6 of this $8 is for this tiny, tiny little bit of bud. It's just disgusting, and it's not nice bud that they're going to use. They're going to be using all the crap. We're just trying to spread the love, that's all. It's just really, really disgusting that the barrier that is really there for people, the daily users, the medical users, is there because of greed.
Cheers. Hi, how are you today?
Good.
What brings you in our Cannabis Substitution Project lineup today?
For the edibles.
For the
Helps
edibles?
with my back.
Hi.
What brings you to Cannabis Substitution Project today?
The edibles.
And-
Weed.
The weed? Okay, and what do the edibles do for you?
They calm my nerves. I suffer from anxiety, and I went through like a really dark phase when I had my baby. I didn't know the meaning of like postpartum depression.
Postpartum depression.
Depression, yeah.
And did it help for your postpartum depression?
Yes.
What brings you to our Cannabis Substitution Project lineup?
Well, I try and show up and get what they offer, whether it's gummy bears or
The edibles?
little edible brownies and things.
Okay,
I
and
don't smoke, so I always give the joint away or dicker for edibles.
oh, that's nice. So how do the edibles help you out?
Well, they basically just they do tend to help me with pain, but also they just taste good, and I don't mind a very small buzz. It's nice.
It's nice.
You know,
Okay.
you don't get super high on it, but
Yeah.
that's all right.
How does it help you out? The edibles.
It's my only pain relief.
It's your only pain relief?
Yeah.
And
believe me, I deal with too much pain. And that's what I'm here today, is for the pain relief.
for the pain relief. How does cannabis help you out?
How has it helped me out?
Yeah.
Been clean from crack cocaine for 18 years.
Wow.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And also I have scoliosis too. I've been using cannabis since I was 16 years old.
You have which?
Scoliosis.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So 39 years of smoking cannabis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it works out. It's nice to see you again. Your hat looks fabulous. Have
Thank
a
you very much.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Hi, big boy. Hello. Here we are.
Thank you. You're welcome. Take care. Yeah, so it's actually a very warm and fuzzy feeling about the CSP this past Christmas time. I hope all of you out there had a really good Christmas as well.
Looked like you had a great time.
And if you don't like Christmas, well, the good news is it's over.
Yes.
So that's good for you people and for everybody, I guess. But I find there's things to enjoy about Christmas, and I like doing that. You had a good Christmas?
I had a wonderful Christmas. Yeah, my friends invited me over for dinner.
Nice. I had a bit of a quiet Christmas. Roxanne was sick, so that wasn't good. But other than that, nothing bad happened. Last year, Roxanne fell in a bathtub in a hotel and went face first into the side of the tub, and we spent the whole day in the emergency room, and she hurt for months and months after that. So this is a much better Christmas than that. She just had a bit of a cold. But I hope everybody had a good Christmas. Coming events, this was a great year for events. We had amazing 420. Cannabis Day was also phenomenal, and so many others. There was a lot of good events this year. For all of you that put on cannabis cups and other things like that, thank you so much for doing that. It's great to get the community together, and there was a lot of events. But there won't be any more events that I'm aware of for 2019.
No.
I don't think so.
There is a New Year's Eve party at High Score.
At High Score. So if you're watching this, you get the inside scoop. At High Score and Cannabis Culture Lounge, second floor. Come on down and visit us there. Next year, there's going to be another great 420. It's yet to unfold.
Oh, man.
And a whole bunch of other great events that are going to come out of that, so that's awesome too. Here at Cannabis Culture on Pot TV, I really want to thank Cannabis Culture and Pot TV for allowing me to do the show. It's been a very good outlet for me to get stuff off my chest. As I look back on the show notes from other weeks, we've covered a fair amount of content. And I do feel like we're able to make a difference because all you people out there are listening to us and thinking about what we're talking about. And I'm sure that some of you are doing some things because there's really a lot of value that can happen both for you personally and for our society if we start doing things about it, making phone calls, talking to people, living a life of being the change that we want to see. And what we want to see is respect for adults to make choices for themselves that don't hurt other people and leave us alone when it comes to what we want to ingest for ourselves, and especially with respect to cannabis and all that stuff. So I've been making that point. This is the 20th episode. We've been making that point. I look forward to the new year as well. There's a bunch of other Pot TV shows on Pot TV. We have From Under the Influence with Greg Williams.
Greg.
Ever watched that show? You been on that show?
No, Greg hasn't invited me yet. Hint,
Greg does an amazing show because he's got a very interesting perspective on things. So, slides forward.
If you can. Well, very far away from the mic.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Yeah.
Me and Mike,
usually have a joint and it's like a mic, but no, here's a real mic.
This one's almost. We got, Gibson Glass makes these tokers, right?
Right.
We've been using it on the show. I love Gibby, and I love these tokers, and so shout out to Gibson Glass.
Show and then
he makes other things. So we got From Under the Influence happens tomorrow. That's on Wednesday at 4 o'clock with Greg Williams. You don't know if it's happening tomorrow. Typically, it would happen on a tomorrow type day, on a Wednesday. Yeah, I guess New Year's Day. Probably not doing it.
Probably not.
I bailed on Christmas Eve, so there you go. Friday, maybe. Once again, getting into the new year. But Jeremiah Vandermeer with Cannabis Culture News Live. Always all the up-to-date information and a great show that Jeremiah puts on. And more valuable as we go because the rarer things are, the more valuable they are. So if you actually catch Jeremiah doing a show on Friday, that's a special thing lately. He's a busy guy. Saturday, it's High Noon with Boss Lissa and her co-hosts. Monday, 420 Lifestyle, Carly Marley, BC Bud Gal. Have you seen her show?
No.
Oh man, you'd be perfect on her show with your big glasses because they have so much fun on her show. Everything fun about cannabis. And next Tuesday it'll be me again.
Right on.
Maybe I'll have a real guest next time. I probably won't have a co-host. Oh well, we ended the year right. I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, hey, thanks for inviting me.
Thanks to J-Mac and to
Glenn.
8 out of 10 Glenn from CannaMatch.ca. Jerry Martin, fighting the good fight, man. They're putting that guy through the ringer, and I'm really happy that he comes on and tells us about it. There should be new developments going on with that in the new year. To Neil for helping me and producing this show and making it work, for the glue that holds it all together. That's what they used to call me at the herb
another
school.
Show. Thomas up there thinks I should have a show.
You should have a show.
Way to go, Thomas.
You'd be good
Happy
on a
New
show.
Year.
Hell yeah, man.
Hey, Darren, you're up there too. I can see you. All right.
It's harder to host than it is to just co-host, though. You know that, eh?
Oh yeah.
That's what I find anyway. I'm not having as much fun as I did when I was just a co-host, but
I used to work at
I'm still having fun, and I think that's the point, So thanks to everybody for watching the show. Wouldn't happen without the audience. I really appreciate the people
Let's give the
like the
audience
show,
a hand. Yeah.
and hopefully we've exposed some truths that can piss you the hell off, and we've provided some hope that if people do things, we can maybe make a change here, because we have affected change in many different ways, and we're continuing to do that. So go and be the change that you want to see, and feel the vibes of being that change, because that's a real excellent place to be, is where something's not right, but you don't have to stay helpless about it. You can actually do something about it, and then you feel much better about it.
Yeah, go hug someone instead of mugging them.
There you go. A hug instead of a mug. The motto for the new year. And my motto, as always, is have as much fun as you can changing the world. We'll see you next week.
Hi there, welcome to the 420 Lifestyle Show. I'm Carly Marley. She's taking a dab. Thanks.
We can play the Sick Moose video.
Oh yes, Sick Moose video. Let's play the Sick Moose video.
That's like all over the place, I guess.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
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 Hi. It's high noon here in the studio.
Look at it. Look at the bud. Right there.
And it was just like so many people, and I was like, "Whoa, this is amazing!" I was like, "I have to cross it."
Acronyms, baby.
I love
So
how
you paid
they're
$8
like,
for half a pencil.
I love.
just put it out there.
I know that we gon' make it out.